welcome to the Plan Applications Committee, Thursday, the 14th of July, 2016. Could I note that this meeting may be recorded and subsequently made available to the public for listening purposes, and could you make sure all phones are switched off or put to flight mode? Thank you. Confirm the Sederunt.
Good morning. I have 16 members present today. We are quoted. And I have apologies from Councillor Geddes and Councillor Witt, Councillor Syme, Councillor Ogilvie and Councillor McGregor are not present but may be along. Just had a late apology from Councillor McGregor. Are not present but may be along later in the meeting.
Thank you, Lucy. Have we got any declarations of interest? Ivor?
Chair, I thought I might have had to declare one on item 7. I'm a member of the Dumfries Common Good. The Glenmucklock is going to be on some of the tributaries to the Nith, but because it's a consultation, I don't need to leave the room. I just thought I'd put that on the record.
Thank you, Ivor. Any other members? Any other Dumfries members of the Common Good will take it as read, as Ivor said. And what? Right. Ian?
Just looking at item 8, Chairman, in regards to the erection of the timber treatment resaw over at the applicant's James Jones and Sons. My son works for them, so I'll be leaving the meeting before then.
Thank you, Ian. Could we confirm the minutes of the previous meeting or agree any amendments? Agreed. Thank you. Lucy, could you outline the procedures to be followed?
The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or other appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determining issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The Chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in Council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The Chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak to make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No other questions may be asked of members. The order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee. Such members should withdraw from the committee chamber after making their presentation, applicants or their agents. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order, and a copy of the public speaking list is available from the committee officer taking notes of our proceedings. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, excepting for national and major developments, which by their very nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. The Chairman of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the Council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application, or, where appropriate, agree a recommendation to be made to full council, who will determine the application. And for the record, we have 3 speakers today, 1 for item 5 and to for item 6, and all presentations are 3 minutes.
Thank you, Lucy. Can we go on to item 4 on the agenda? College Mains, College Road, Dumfries, 15/P/3/0506. This is I've got to say it in a minute. This is deferred from the last meeting, and Lucy will just let us know what members are entitled to take part in this debate.
The members that are entitled to take part in the decision for this item are Councillor Martin, Councillor Dempster, Councillor Blake, Councillor Ian Crothers, Councillor Dick, Councillor Diggle, Councillor Drybra, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Geddes, Councillor Hislop, Councillor McComb, Councillor Ogilvie, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Lucy. And we'll just defer, we'll go through the drawing. Speaking in this one is Vary Duff, and like everybody, I'd like to give appreciation to Vary, as this is her last meeting as she's leaving. So, is anybody ready, Vary?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I'll just run through some of the slides again that were shown at the last committee meeting. The location of the site, the application site is located at College Road in Dumfries, just to the north of the Sandside estate. It's a greenfield site and is not allocated for housing development. It is within the settlement boundary but is white land. The applicant's block plan is basically just a red line around the site with no further details than that. The land is undulating greenfield land within an a farm. The site is located close to the SEPA flood risk area, which is associated with the River Nith and the Maryholme Burn. The SEPA flood risk area does encroach within the site slightly to the south of it. However, the White Sands flood risk assessment, which was carried out, does show a better situation than that, which it comes very close to the site but doesn't encroach within it. A slide which shows the looking along College Road towards the site with Goldie Park on the left hand side, and going further towards the site again, Goldie Park and Forsyth Avenue on the right hand side. You can see here this is where the footway ends and the road begins to narrow. And again further towards the site with no footways and the narrowing of the road. And again, the application site is on the right hand side there. And looking back towards the application site from the bridge which goes over the Maxton cycle path, the application site on the left hand side, and access to the rear of King George V Park to the right. And looking back towards the bridge which goes over the Maxton cycle path. And looking into the site, it is an undulating area of land with no particular features. And again, from the access to Maryholme Farm, this is the lower area of the site which does come close to the flood risk area. And again, looking towards the site with College Mains Farm building, which is out with the application site beyond the boundary. The application is recommended for refusal. Thanks.
Thanks, Barry. I think we had quite an extensive discussion on this one before it got deferred for a site visit. So, as I say, we could try and repeat, not go over the arguments we had before. Archie.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, took the opportunity to go to the site visit this week, and I can see there is opportunities within that particular area. However, looking at the plan application in front of us, I think there are issues that officers don't have any information on, such as drainage and flooding and things like that. Also, some roads issues that I saw while I was there. So, looking at the planning permission in principle, although there are, I can see a potential for that. I don't think we've got enough information here that we can make a safe decision. I don't think it could be covered by any conditions that come forward in any future application with a full application. So therefore, I would go with the recommendation to refuse.
Chair, seconding that. Stephen?
I was just going to second Archie. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. There's just a question before we actually go to that. Can I ask the officers what is the uptake on the designated LDP identified sites for housing?
David?
I don't have precise figures to hand, but basically the uptake has been fairly limited just because of the downturn in the housing market. There is more than sufficient allocated land within the Dumfries housing market area in the LDP, because we factored in not just what the housing land supply dictated for the LDP, but also allowed for quite considerable generosity allowance. So basically with areas such as Marchfield, which are serviced and identified, the take-up is quite slow, so there is no overriding need for additional land to be found, certainly within the LDP1 time period.
Yes, so from that we take either nobody's shown an interest in the sites that have already been identified. I think, is that a fair comment?
There's an issue between whether there's interest in, and whether or not the sites are effective. The level of demand for new housing is currently quite low, but as far as we can tell, the vast majority of land which is identified in Dumfries for housing is effective, and certainly, as I say, some of it is indeed serviced and ready for development.
Andy?
Thanks. Based on that, then, as one of the local members, I'd actually be looking to approve this application. If I can just address very quickly the reasons for refusal, the lack of integration with other areas. It's 130 metres from this side, about 200 metres over the bridge still, including it's close to the new bridge project, and it's almost next door to the Kirkcudbright shopping centre. The roads, in my personal knowledge, that used to host Arctics going back and forward both ways, and I'm sure any amendments to the road to make it wide enough could be covered by a condition. The flood risk is minimal or nothing. If it was a flood risk there, the whole in this side would be flooded, to be frank, and half of Dumfries. And again, the floor levels and the drainage could be satisfied via conditions. And the last but no means least, this wasn't specified in the LDP as quality farmland. It was designated as white land, and they're available for any purpose. And lastly, the other thing is about the school situation that was mentioned in the report. The Priest Learning Town is committed to a whole town basis, not just one primary school. So therefore, that reason for refusal, I would suggest, not actually one of the formal reasons for refusal, is refuted. So I'd be quite happy to put a motion that we do grant it, based on the positive impact on the local economy, and will address a housing need in an area between two areas which are covered by the SIMD, and will have a social economic benefit, which to me outweigh the reasons for refusal, and would recommend approval as an exception to policy.
Chair?
Just to ask a question on the last comment there about the housing need. I mean, we've just heard from David that there's not an uptake in any of the land that's actually made available now. So I'm not sure where Councillor Ferguson's actually coming with there's a housing need, because there's no housing at the moment within the LDP that's actually being used.
Ian?
I suppose.
The three goes, Andy, so let another member come in.
I mean, I think probably just to wind back to the beginning of the site visit, I thought that was very helpful. It put the whole site, for me personally, into context. Some of the things that Andy's picked up on in regards to its location. It is very close to the built settlement of Dumfries. I think it's Sandside on the north side, but if I forget the actual name of the place, there is potentially constraint roads there, but I think it looks like previous historic use, and I think Design the Streets 2010 would possibly again accommodate that when it comes to that. I think Andy's touched on that through conditions. Its location, the council ourselves, we're looking at building, I think it's the bridge or the hub in regards to the part of the Dumfries Learning project, that certainly it's there. It's got, this site was built out, it would be close proximity to the King George V Park, so there's green areas. You're close to North West Resource Centre, you're right, you've got all these cycle links, road links. I think quite a sensible place really, but I can understand where the port's come to its conclusions, but there hasn't been an uptake on the existing sites, whether that's that they're not the appropriate sites. I mean, it's first stage of that local development plan, we're going through that. I mean, I think, for me, certainly, taking on board the points that Andy's brought up, the flooding issues as well, it's actually sitting on the crest of a hill. So it's the units itself, again, I think the flooding is almost a red herring, but I see why it has to be identified, but the actual chance of the houses flooding is negligible. In fact, I would say nil from where it's located. So, I mean, I was certainly happy to support Andy Way's motion to approve this, and its reasons for exception for approval as he's put forward. I think they're appropriate in the circumstances. I can understand we're in the first stage of a local development plan. This is an opportunity to actually put some affordable housing in North West Dumfries and address some of the problems in that area.
Andy, you want back in?
Yes, I take Archie's point, but I think the question I asked David was, how do we know why there is no uptake in these other areas? It's a best guesstimate, I would suggest, because we don't know if it's because nobody wants to build houses there, or there's no appetite for building houses there, where in this occasion we have a site which isn't designated for anything at all, where people are prepared to build houses. So it's the $64,000 question, right? What really is the rationale for saying we should ask them to move these houses elsewhere when the other sites might not be suitable for the houses that are involved? I don't for a minute mean to undermine the officers, but that wasn't what the gist of my comment was.
Thanks, Andy. Peter?
Thanks, Chair. Just looking at the reasons for refusal, I mean, I can discount both reasons 3 and 4 very easily. It's not good quality land. Having looked at it, it's probably reasonable grassland at best, and I shouldn't think it's had a plough through it for a very long time. Reason 3, the flooding. There just doesn't seem to be a flood risk, and as Councillor Carruthers said, that it's on the crest, and any flow off the site will easily be can be met by conditions over to the river.
Ivor?
Chair, we've heard that in the local plan there are numerous sites. Maybe those sites aren't in the right area. When you look at the site at Marchfield, the main reason for that site and the size of the houses that are going in there, I would say you're looking for professional people who might work at the hospital. We've just moved the hospital from the east side of the river to the west side. We have 3 bridges to get across. Now, the bypass is nigh on at capacity. The 2 bridges in the town are at capacity, and what we should be looking to do as a planning authority is identifying land on the west side so that we can actually access people who are going to hospital. I would rather see this taken into consideration today as a whole so that we could plan it. You could actually allocate one house on this site and then another house and another house, and when you actually look at the roads impact, it would be easier because every house you put in means the percentage increase would be dropping. I'd rather see us look at this as an opportunity to address what is the cause of we don't have allocated sites on the west that are effective. This one could come into play, and I think we should look at this one.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. I was actually surprised by the quality of the access road. I have no doubt that 2 cars could safely pass each other on that road. As far as flooding is concerned, I don't think there is a flood risk on the site. There may well be an issue with regard to runoff water from the site, but that could be handled by an appropriate, SUDS programme. There is a difficulty with the lack of information provided. I think that is a weakness with the application. But as far as flood risk and access are concerned, I don't think these are major difficulties.
Jim? Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. I think clearly there's an argument to be made for an application at this site, but the one that we've got in front of us doesn't make that argument. And I think listening to members are having to make the argument based on soft information, which may come through in a future application. But as what we've got in front of us, I think we should just go with the recommendations as the motion has been put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. It's really just to clarify a number of issues. If you look at Vary's report, paragraph 4.2 to 4.5 really sets out the issue about the allocation. Just because it's white land, i.e. it's not identified for any specific purpose, doesn't mean that it's automatically suitable for any other purpose. There's policy H1B is all to do with infill and windfall sites. So that really requires that I'll try and read here. It's the demonstrate to the satisfaction of the council that the proposed development would result in the development of a brownfield site and/or would not prevent or restrict the physical development of an allocated site and is not of a scale to adversely affect the overall development strategy in the plan. So given that we're talking, we don't know the numbers, but the figure of about 60 units has been put forward, that does have a potential effect given we don't have the final figures for the housing supply for LDP2 as yet, but early indications show that at the moment we're unlikely to need any additional sites in the Dumfries area. And therefore, if you include an extra 60 units here, you might have to remove an existing allocated site in the plan. So there are knock-on effects to the strategy. In terms of the flooding, it's simply said at the moment that it's not enough information to demonstrate it. So if members are minded to approve it, I would suggest it can only be a willingness to approve at this stage, subject to getting that information that you need just to be absolutely certain that it's not just the flooding issue, it's the drainage of the site as well. So we would need that detail even at a planning permission principle stage. The roads issues are obviously articulated in the report, but the lack of footways, members who visited it will have come to their own conclusion on that one. The final issue is just to say that the fact that this is purported to be for affordable housing, the applicant is not a registered social landlord in RSL. The site isn't identified in the SHIP, so therefore we could only, as a planning authority, reasonably attach the normal requirement, which is a 20% allocation. So it wouldn't necessarily be 100% affordable housing that is coming forward.
Jim?
Just a throwaway line to start with, Chair. If you want to see some unsuitable agricultural land, come to Upper Nithsdale. They would love that green, lush land that's featured in the images here. And as for no having seen a plough, I don't know when I last saw a plough in any land in the area, never mind that particular field. But it's about the LDP, surely. We considered the LDP on the basis that hospital was being built where it is. We're not suddenly finding ourselves in a position here where we've discovered that the hospital being built and haven't made provision for it.
Ian?
It was just a question on what you said, David, in terms of the numbers. Does that really have to be taken into consideration if it's an in-principle one, or is that not the numbers thing, not something that can be dealt with when a specific application comes forward? How much weight at that point, or this point anyway, do we need to take numbers?
It's quite legitimate to put forward just a red line around a site for the planning permission in principle stage. But obviously we have to look at the size of the site and have a rough idea of how many units can go in to have to work out what the effect is likely to be on the strategy. And certainly the figure of around 60 units has been put forward, so we have to have some cognizance of that. Certainly, having walked the sites just on Tuesday, I think you certainly can get a reasonable amount of houses on there. Whether or not you get 60 is obviously open to debate, but we have to factor in the size of the site, which is approximately a hectare, and that does allow for quite a number of units.
Thank you. Now, members, Andy, can you tell us what your amendment is to the officer's recommendation?
I thought I read it before. I'll start again. Then, okay, that this will have a positive impact on the local economy. Will address housing need in the area of SIMD. So the socio-economic benefits outweigh the reasons for refusal, and recommend approval as an exception to policy.
The only bit I've got is an issue with is where you've said about the housing need, because as I've already outlined, the take-up of such and the allocation of the sites, there isn't a proven housing need as such. If you want to put in the words that it's affordable housing, the additional affordable housing, then that's fine.
I'm happy to amend with David's recommendation. Yeah. Affordable housing as opposed to.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. I mean, I've just got to make a comment in regards to the local housing strategy. There is obviously an ongoing need, but I think David's made the appropriate comments.
Vote, Lucy.
Okay, we have a vote. Proposed motion put forward by Councillor Dryborough and seconded by Councillor Martin to refuse the application as per the officer's recommendation, and also on the basis that there isn't enough information for members to make a safe decision. And the amendment, which has been proposed by Councillor Ferguson and seconded by Councillor Crothers, is that it is appropriate to approve the application based on
Is that willingness to approve? Subject to the flood.
willingness to approve the application subject to flooding information, and on the basis that the socio-economic reasons outweigh the reasons for refusal, and also that it would also address the additional affordable housing need for the area. Councillor Martin?
Motion.
Councillor Dempster?
Motion.
Councillor Blake?
Amendment.
Councillor Crothers?
Amendment.
Councillor Dick?
Amendment.
Councillor Diggle? Councillor Dryborough?
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson?
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop?
Amendment.
Councillor McComb?
Motion.
Councillor Thompson?
Motion.
And I can confirm that the amendment carries with 6 votes to 5, and that decision which members have made that there is a willingness to approve the application subject to flood information coming forward, and based on the socio-economic reasons, and also that this will address the additional affordable housing need for the area.
Thanks, Chair. I think in light of what's been said, that any application that comes forward, full application, comes back to this committee.
It's really just, sorry, I should have probably clarified all this before getting the vote on it, but what I'm thinking about here is the willingness to approve. It's subject to getting satisfactory details back for the flood risk and the drainage. If that's okay, I assume from members it's okay for that to be delegated to officers to attach the appropriate conditions with the 20% affordable housing.
Andy?
In the scheme of delegation, given it's a councillor's relative, is that, can we do that, David? Now we've agreed this, can we delegate powers to you?
Well, you've actually made the decision on this application. So really all I would be doing is just putting on the conditions as appropriate. For any future application that came in, provided the ownership was still the same, it would have to come back before this committee anyway.
Now we go on to item 5 in the agenda, the vacant plot adjacent to...
Just very briefly, sir, since it's Vary's last day, should maybe record formally or thanks for her service to the committee.
At the start, formally, that's fine. You got that? Item 5 in the agenda, the vacant plot adjacent to Ochtrelure Way, Stranraer, 16/P/1/0 030. I've got Billy Murray speaking to this one. Whenever you're ready, Billy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is an application for a single dwelling house accessed from Ochtrelure Way in Stranraer. Before I present the slides, I've just got one small correction to make. In paragraph 411, the report refers to 45 degrees in the first line. That should be 25 degrees. It's the 25-degree method here, not the 45-degree method. Okay, I'll take you through the slides. This is the application site, marked in red in the centre of that image. It's within an exclusively residential area. As you'll note there, it's completely surrounded by residential developments. This is a view of the site and Ochtrelure Way from the southeast. The site's on the right in that view. You can just see the fence line, which you now see in a closer view here. So the site forms part of a fenced-off area. That's a view across the road from the other side of Ochtrelure Way towards the site and the housing development beyond at lower level. Sorry. That's a view in the other direction, again, over the extended fenced-off area to which there is reference in the report. This is a close view of the site from the southwest. That's a view of the site frontage through Ochtrelure Way from the northwest. Perhaps on that slide there, I'll just mention, you'll see the report refers to the fact that Ochtrelure Way is described as a distributor road. What that means is it's slightly wider. It's 7.3 carriageway rather than 5.5 as normally would be expected. It has 2 metre footway set back behind the grass strip, as you see there. It's still 30 miles an hour restricted. There would be an expectation that roads such as Ochtrelure Way or a distributor road in general would carry higher volumes of traffic than normal roads. That said, however, there is no prohibition in roads terms to single accesses being taken from a distributor road. So that's again a close view of the site. That's from the southeast. And again, that's a close view of the site looking back up towards Ochtrelure Way in that image. You'll see the site slopes down quite significantly from the road level towards the rear. This is a view across the site again, showing the slope. And this is a view of the rear of the site, again showing the difference in levels between the application site and the existing development at lower level on the right in that view. It's possibly a better view to see it there. This is a view from Ailsa Way looking back up towards the site. The site's the green area on the far side of the timber fence there, just over the top of the bushes that you see. That's a closer view. That's just angled looking across the rear garden of 32 Ailsa Way towards the application site. That's a view across the rear gardens of the two closest dwelling houses sitting below the site to the rear. And that's a view looking from Ailsa Way over the curtilage of 34 Ailsa Way back towards the site. And that's another image. That's me just standing at the gate. So that's looking towards the site, which you see sits at higher level in that view. This is just another general view along Ochtrelure Way. And again, just to show the characteristics of the road and the development surrounding. There's reference in the report to the fact that previous approvals for housing development here indicated planting areas that correspond more or less with the fenced-off area that is on site now. So this is the best extract I can find from historic plans to try and show that. You see the long, narrow, shaded area. There's a row of trees alongside Ochtrelure Way, and then just beyond that, there's a shaded area. That area is all fenced off. Now, the application site is just beyond the shaded area in the top right-hand corner of that image. So while that approved landscaping plan for that development did not include the application site. When the fencing has been erected, it appears as though the fencing has been erected to include the application site. So physically on the ground, the application site appears to have been included with that planting area, albeit that it wasn't actually shown as part of it in the approved plan. So these are the plans submitted with the application. That's the site location plan. Location plans and cross sections. Proposed floor plans and section. Proposed elevations. So the recommendation is to refuse the application for the reason noted.
Thank you. Point set. Clarification, Joe.
Could you clarify on page 23, paragraph K, the surprised by development is unaware of this fenced off area in which residents have been paying gardening and maintenance costs for 10 plus years was a vacant plot. At the time of purchase of the house, this was described as wild garden. So what effect does one have on the other, if you like? Could you clarify the issue? What entitlement does the applicant have to take on this piece of supposed wild garden, which people have been paying for maintenance on?
I don't think that, sorry, Chair.
Fine.
I don't think there's any distinct relationship between the two. I do make reference to it in paragraph 4.8, in as much as it, you know, I make a note in that paragraph. If people have been paying for maintenance of that area, it tends to reinforce the view that the intention was always that it would be retained as a landscaped area of open space.
Thanks, Chair. So I might have misunderstood you, but Billy, am I right in thinking that this application site was supposed to be planted under another planning application years ago?
Billy.
Put it on. I thought you put it on. That plan shows the area that was to be planted under the previous approval in 2004. So as far as the conditions of that planning permission go, that was the area that is shown. However, visiting the site on the ground, the application site itself has been fenced in with that area and appears to have some planting on it. So it appears as though the intention was that the larger area was all to be retained as a planting area. But in terms of the planning history, that's the best plan we can find to show the area. So I suspect that if it came to trying to secure strict compliance with the planning condition, that would be the only area we could enforce against.
Thank you.
Just for clarity in my own mind here, my understanding is you can apply for planning permission on any ground, irrespective of what's currently in use now. Whether you get granted it or not is a different matter. Is that factually correct?
Yes,
so
that's absolutely correct, and there's no suggestion otherwise in the report.
Ian?
Can I just ask, just how much weight are we to give the intention of whoever had intended to plant that area in the first instance with the 2004 application? How much weight do we have to consider that? How enforceable it is? The other thing, if I read the report correctly, there it was. Am I right in saying it's suitable for as a site in principle, leaving aside the design of the application? Yeah, I'll just leave those two questions in the meantime.
Billy?
Taking your second question first, I think the report's quite clear on that in paragraph 4.3 that the proposal satisfied the second and third of the criteria in H1B and thus meets the terms of H1B. So yes, in principle, it could be an infill site. in terms of the weight to be given to an intention that that would be a landscaped area, I think I've already clarified that I think if it came down to it, the only area we could enforce against would be the area that's shown in that plan, which does not include the application site.
Just to ask one final thing here. Just, am I right in saying that where there's a development, there's got to be a percentage of greenfield area? And again, if that were no longer a greenfield area, would that take away from the original development and how much greenfield space that they provided?
You are correct, yes, there were and are policies that require certain areas of open space, whether active or passive, within housing developments. I think I also make reference to that in the report, that whether or not that area was intended to be planted under a planning condition, it was clearly designed in as an area of open space as part of the larger housing development and extensive housing development in the surrounding area. So clearly the insertion of a dwelling house into that area would have some effect and would reduce the area of open space in those developments.
Ivor?
I've had some of the question answered. So, in the original planning application, if I had the block plan in front of me, was that piece of ground included in the original planning application, or was it excluded? Because if it's included, that was to sort of suggest that you agreed that it was suitable for housing development, maybe not detailed, but on in principle, or as we have now. So was that included within the original plan, and was it included as green land? Because if it's to be open green space, then that should be in the report. It should be included in the original document. It's, you know, that this was green land, because otherwise you could put a house on there because it has in principle or deemed consent because it's actually been part of the area.
Billy?
When you say, can I just be clear on what you're asking? When you're saying, was the site included in the original, do you mean in the landscaped area for the original, or as part of the site? And when you say original, are you talking...
The block site. If you take the red line...
When you say original, are you talking about the 2004 application? Without having the plan for that, I cannot be definitive as to where the site boundary was shown in that 2004 application. To the best of my knowledge, it was the area of land, the application site was within the confines of the site in 2004. But I emphasise I cannot be definitive at that at this stage. In terms of the principle, whether or not it was included as part of the site in 2004, and your question, which implies that if it was, it's got planning permission in principle, I would suggest that that's not really relevant, because we've already said in the report, and in reply to a question from Councillor Dick, we've indicated that under current policies in the LDP, the principle of housing development there is accepted. It's the principle is not at issue in this application. It's the layout and design that is the issue.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. I understand the proposed house will be some 16 metres back from the roadway. Presumably that puts it towards the rear of the site.
Just see the paragraph where I give the distances. Paragraph 4.9 goes into quite considerable detail about where the house sits on the plot. As I recall, the distance from the rear elevation of the house to the rear of the plot would be in the order of 9 metres. So it's rear of the centre of the plot, so it's 16 metres back to the front from the road, but it's still 9 metres off the back, so...
My question, Billy, is would that bring the proposed site in line with number 30, which is shown on the plan? Yes, there's a property there with a number 30 on it, which, you know...
Oh, the house down at lower level, you mean?
Yes. Yep, you can see number 30 there to the top left of the site.
It wouldn't be in line with, well, it depends what you mean by in line with. If you're suggesting that number 30 establishes a building line, we wouldn't accept that because number 30 presents itself to a cul-de-sac at Ailsa Way. So it's not a consideration whether it's in line with another house at lower level accessed by another road or not, I would suggest.
Thank you.
We've got no other members. I've got no object. Oh, sorry.
Sitting here without. What I was going to ask is if there was a proposal which actually had more than one house, would that be more acceptable? I've been struggling to understand. I mean, I think the location plan, the very first page of our papers, probably makes it clear that it's not in conformity with the existing proposal. But if there was more, you could say, yes, you could actually place these houses together and they would then provide a couple of residences coming off Ochtrelure Way. Is it the fact that it's one single building is the problem? Because I think otherwise one has to ask the question, why is that so very, very unacceptable?
David?
I think the principle here is the fact that there's a road hierarchy where you have a distributor road. If you look on the plan that's on the screen there, none of these houses have direct access onto the distributor road. They all actually come off individual cul-de-sacs, which then feed into the distributor road. So it is, because of the levels and that access issue, it's at odds with how the rest of that development has been built out.
Jim?
Billy, you might not be able to answer that, but it seems to me that the simplest solution right at the outset would have been had the foliage and the thing continued on right to the roundabout, because what we've done is we've created a road for road and backs, we're leaving a space and thereby an opportunity, and maybe even the layout could have been different unless it was ground conditions, etc., that prompted that being left alone. But I just wonder if there's a reason why it was stopped at such a strange location in the general scheme of things.
I take it you're referring to the original 2004 application?
Yes,
aye. I mean, I couldn't speculate on reasons why that was the case, 12 years ago. All I would say is that there is always, there's always a desire to have planted areas and just open space areas as well. So you wouldn't want the whole area planted. So again, I emphasize I'm speculating. Perhaps they wanted to have the mix of just grassed areas and planted areas.
Thank you. We've got no other members. We've got no other objectors down. Could we have Mr. Clark Preston, the agent, please? You've got 3 minutes, Clark, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Basically, I'd just like to take a few moments to read the first page, please. As you read, 191 houses have been approved in 14 years, totally surrounding, and are all double-storey. All neighbours' concerns have been addressed, totally complies. As I said, all surrounding are two-storey. Now, the area about the condition does not form part of the site. And I'll also say we get Roads Department approval for the proposed access. I would like to go on to the photographs. There's no change to the grassed area that you see. Out there. Down there, there's no change. Kept it totally open. You'll notice the site, it's got its own defined boundaries. We're not just taking a bit of green land, it's all there. And again, the next photo, you'll see neighbouring houses, much to the design, concrete tiles, dry ash, facing brick. Indeed, all photos will show you the exact same. Could we skip on to the next one? As you'll see the site there, slightly running downhill. And again, the next one. Immediately across the street, facing brick, dry ash, concrete tiles. We're totally keeping with the area. And if I could see the next one, please. This is an area, actually the local development plan, right over this area, Stranraer, completely two-storey houses. And the next one, please. Again, we've just seen this. You'll see, I'm going to point out distances between houses. We are greater. And that's a hatched area that's conditioned that does not form part of this application site. And let's see the next one, please. Again, we're maintaining the lawn, completely open plan, with the roads permission for an access. And again, turning area for 2 cars. That's a lot. Thanks very much.
Members, can you remain in your seat, Clark, please? Stephen.
Thanks very much. It's mentioned in the report, in the submission in support of the proposal, that the house has been designed in full context with the existing and surrounding area. And what you've just described there indicates, in terms of the design and the height, etc., the house individually, that there's a commonality there with the other ones. But on the face of it, the house very much looks like the kind of odd one out in the fact that it would be the only one with an access onto Ochtrelure Road. So I'm just wondering what you meant by in full context, if you're able to address that. Thank you.
Sorry, I hate, excuse me, I'm totally hard of hearing and
Sure. On page 23 of the report, in the agent submission in support of the proposal, and on the back of what you've said there, you mentioned that the house has been designed in full context with the existing and surrounding area. So I'm just wondering if you could explain what you mean by in full context.
sorry, you hate, excuse me, I'm absolutely. In full context, basically what I'm saying is the surrounding area, all bound houses are of 2-storey, facing brick, concrete roof tiles, we're totally keeping in. And what I will say about this whole area of Stranraer is, it's all sloped, they've shelved in, retained, built houses at higher and lower, it's stepped all the way up the entire site. So this is totally in keeping with everything we've got up there.
Stephen.
Thank you. It strikes me that on the face of it, it looks very much the odd one out in that it would be the only house going on directly onto that road. How does that fit into the context?
Sorry, excuse my ears, this is totally...
If you've got a hearing aid, there is a loop system.
I take it the question is about access here. Yes. Now, basically, with Roads Department's approval, because the criteria is, we get the visibility display left and right, so we have coming out. We've also got enough room on the site for parking of 2 vehicles and turning. Basically, we can enter and exit the site in first gear, forward gear. So we can, there's no danger.
Yeah.
Mr. Preston, was any consideration given to negotiating access from Aylesgate Way to the site?
Full consideration was given to all residents of Aylesgate Way. Basically, in the design, as you'll see, there's no habitable room windows facing the rear. Everything is out to the main at Ochtrelure Way.
Thanks. Ian?
Thank you. I had 2 points, and that was really one of them, but I don't actually think the agent addressed that. I think it was any possibility given from access from the cul-de-sac in Aylesgate Way. And the second point was it tended to be a bit of confusion when we saw the picture of the site, and the agent referred to that the grass would be left intact, and yet we see there's going to be a driveway across it. So I'd just like to ask them to clarify these 2 points.
Chair, if the applicant can understand
Access
the
from
question.
Aylesgate Way? No, absolutely not, because of the change in levels. There's no way we could have got access there whatsoever.
Billy?
Can I ask from the second point, please?
Billy?
Yes, I was just going to try and help there, Chair, and clarification on Councillor McComb's question about levels, about access from Aylesgate Way. I think you'll see from that slide the difference in levels would mitigate that against that completely. It just wouldn't be practical.
Chair, the agent doesn't understand. We can't hear right what we're saying. We're going to have to try and set up a mechanism so that the gentleman can respond properly or accurately. Otherwise, we're at risk of maybe compromising any decision we might make. Because he didn't answer Jim McComb's question, he didn't get that right, and didn't hear the second one about crossing the grass from Councillor Blake. So I think we might have to defer this and find a way where the agent can actually hear and respond appropriately to what members are saying.
We had this once before, I think it was a matter of a few months, well, 6 months ago, and the only place we could have it was in here, and he actually brought someone along. But as I say, David?
Chair's going to suggest that if it might assist, we could actually write down the very questions that have been raised and ask for a verbal response to those.
Right, defer this then. Minutes. We can defer it for 5 minutes till we get.
Members might all want to rephrase or write out their questions during the recess so that it can be handed to the gentleman then.
You've got a list of these now, the various tasks. Right, no, I'll just have you got a list of the questions, Clark? Can you give an answer to them if possible, please?
Yes, I'm looking at question 3 here about disruption via the proposed access to the site. Yes, there will be slight disruption, but it's only 3 metres wide, and there'll be drop curbs, so there will, to suit pedestrian traffic, wheelchairs, bicycles, blah, 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 so that would be minimal. And there's also another one here regarding access from Ailsa Gateway. What I will say is the site levels are too steep to bring any access. It was looked at very early on and not feasible.
That suit members? Right, right, thank you, Clerk. You may assume your seat. Members, we're now in session. Archie?
Chair, just looking at the report and looking at the pictures, I think I would presume that an awful lot of underpinning would actually be needed at the back of this particular house because of the length of that. Looking at the report, listening to what members have asked and things like that, I suggest that we go with the recommendations on this one.
Any members otherwise minded? Ivor?
Chair, I had sympathies with what Councillor Maitland was saying. If it was 3 houses in the whole triangle that isn't included all the way along, then it wouldn't be a sore thumb. This does look a wee bit like a sore thumb, one being stuck in there, so I'd second Councillor Driver.
Any other members otherwise minded? Ian?
Well, I would suggest that in view of the fact that it satisfies criteria 2 and 3 of H1B, that the area is satisfactory for building, and it would probably be an enhancement of what at the moment is a bit of a not particularly attractive area. I would suggest that that would outweigh the reason for refusal on balance, and would therefore move approval.
Maybe seconder? Nope. Peter?
I'll second.
Aye. 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 Ian, could you give us the basis for the refusal, please?
Yes, thanks, Chair. That in view that the application satisfies...
Approval, I mean.
Sorry?
Yeah, for the approval, the basis for the approval.
It satisfies criteria, the second and third of the criteria of H1B in principle. I feel it would be an enhancement of what is currently a not particularly attractive area, and it is acceptable for building, and consequently that would outweigh the recommendation on the basis of the layout and design.
Through you, Chair, David, can you just confirm that that's appropriate?
Okay. Yes, that's fine.
Yes, have a motion put forward by Councillor Drybrough and seconded by Councillor Hislop to refuse the application as per the recommendation in the report. And I have an amendment by Councillor Dick and seconded by Councillor Diggle to approve the application as it satisfies H1B in principle, and also it would be an enhancement to the existing area.
Sorry, Chair, if I just be clear on that, satisfied criteria 2 and 3 of H1B.
And Chair, I assume that's subject to the appropriate conditions in terms of road access, etc.
But is this an actual allocated site? I thought it was a site that had been there. The contractor who developed that site was supposed to plant that area. So how can it be an allocated site? And it's no physical development to an allocated site. I would suggest that that's a wrong criteria to use.
David?
Chair, no, I mean, the policy which Councillor Dick cited is absolutely correct. If you're looking at an infall or an infill or a windfall site, then that falls under policy H1B. So that's the correct policy to be assessing this, and Councillor Dick has confirmed that the second and third criteria of that policy are met here. Although the first one, that it be a brownfield site, obviously isn't, so I'm quite comfortable with that. It doesn't have to be an allocated site, obviously, but it needs to then meet the criteria of H1B.
Got the vote? Got the vote?
Okay. Councillor Martin?
Motion.
Councillor Dempster?
Motion.
Councillor Blake?
Motion.
Councillor Crothers? No. Councillor Dick?
Amendment.
Councillor Diggle? Councillor Dryborough?
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson?
Amendment?
Councillor Gilroy? Councillor Groom?
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop? Councillor Maitland?
Motion.
Councillor McCaughtrey?
Motion.
Councillor McComb?
Motion.
Councillor McKee?
Motion.
Councillor Thompson?
Motion.
And I can confirm that the motion carries for 11 votes to 4, and the decision is to refuse the application as per the recommendation in the report.
Yep. Okay, we now go on to item 6 on the agenda, land to the west of Craig Lodge, Auchenmalg, 16/B/1/0043. I've got Billy speaking to this one again. Are we ready, Billy?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you say, this is an application for planning permission in principle for residential development of a site west of Craig Lodge, Auchenmalg. Again, I have one minor correction to make in the report before I go on. In paragraph 412, it refers to visibility to the west. It should be to the east, about halfway down that paragraph. It says that visibility could not be achieved to the west. In the report, that should be could not be achieved to the east. So I'll take you through the slides. That's the application site. It sits to the north of the 714 Coast Road running from Glenluce to Port William. That's just a closer view of it to show where the location is. You'll see there is Caravan Chalet Park in the left in that view running from the Cock Inn eastwards, and then there are 2 dwelling houses, and then there is a gap site of which the application site forms part, and then Craig Lodge to the right or east of the site in that view. That's a view along the A747 looking east. The property you see in the distance there is Craig Lodge. That's a similar view, just slightly closer. The site's overgrown at the moment. Note the steep embankment, which is that raised beach to the rear of the site. That's a view along the site, again, from the west, looking towards Craig Lodge. That's a view from the east, looking westwards, again, looking back along the site, and you can just about see the existing residential development at the other end of the gap site. That's a view from east of Craig Lodge, looking back towards the application site. The application site in that view is just beyond Craig Lodge. That's a closer view of Craig Lodge and the application site. The report makes mention of the stone boundary wall to Craig Lodge, and that's a closer view of the corner of that boundary wall where it meets the site. I included that because there's reference in the report to the fact that the indicative access shown at this stage could not achieve the appropriate visibility because the applicant would not have control of the necessary land. In other words, to achieve the necessary visibility at the indicated application access point at the moment would require removal of part of that stone wall and the stone, well, it's ivy covered stone pillar in that corner. These are the plans submitted with the application. That's the location plan, indicative layout plan, site plan. You'll note the indicative access was shown at the right-hand side or the eastern corner of the site, which is right up against the stone wall and pillar shown in the last of my slides. And that's a closer view of the indicative block plan. Sections across the site, again indicative only. So the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions.
Okay, Billy, members, points of clarification? Andy?
Forgive my lack of local knowledge here, but is that the other side of the sand, is that the the bay? Is that salt water? Right, so is there no flooding report here for this? Given that
the application site is not shown to be within or in close proximity to a flood risk area.
How many dwelling houses are there, Billy, immediately to the east of Craig Lodge? There are some shown in the slide there.
Immediately to the east of Craig Lodge. There are none immediately to the east of Craig Lodge. There are 2 dwelling houses some distance to the east of Craig Lodge. I've covered that in the report. Maybe if I take you back. You see the application site in red there, Craig Lodge is adjoining to the east. And then there's a gap, and there are 2 houses some distance to the east, a couple 100 metres, 300 metres to the east.
Yes, but in the slide of Craig Lodge, there was clearly a house shown on the far side.
Oh, I see what you mean, sorry. Yes, I was just taking Craig Lodge as the group of buildings at Craig Lodge. You mean there are 2 new build dwelling houses immediately to the east of the original stone built Craig Lodge, yes.
Now, members, points of clarity. Ian?
It's just referring to the map on the plan. It shows application site, but actually states it is Craig Lodge. It seems to be a conflict of what's really being applied for.
Really?
It's not Craig Lodge, that's just a coincidence of where the annotation is on the plan.
Sorry, I don't quite follow that one.
Sorry, Chair, is this on page 29 of the agenda, the location plan there? Yes, the annotation for Craig Lodge, unfortunately, is actually on the application site, but Craig Lodge is to the east of the site boundary, but I can understand the confusion.
Right. No other members? Patsy?
Yes, just a bit of clarification on the issue of street lighting that seems to might be needed or might not, depending on adopted road. It's all in 4.12 to 4.14. I mean, I'm looking there and there isn't any street lighting, and I wonder why we would suddenly be putting street lighting in here. But I hope it's not going to happen.
Because the indicative arrangement for access at the moment shows a single road accessing 3 dwelling houses. Under council standards, that would require to be an adoptable road to full road standards. One of the elements of that would be street lighting, as would suds drainage, access by a refuse vehicle and the like. And so there's consideration of that report as to whether or not that would be an acceptable arrangement in planning terms, the conclusion being that it wouldn't.
In easy speak, street lights or not street lights?
Not street lights.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. What is the extent of the small building group of Auchenmalg?
The small building group at Auchenmalg, again, if I can find the appropriate paragraph in the report. It runs from Craig Lodge in the east to the Cock-Inn in the west.
It's quite an extensive area.
Yes.
Yep. We've got no other members. Could we have Alan Gorst, objector, please? And you've got 3 minutes, Alan. I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Hi, good morning. The established pattern and character of development between Seabank and Gillespie Bridge.
Can you lean nearer the mic or move the mic, please? Can't really hear.
Sorry, you're not hearing me?
No.
Yeah, press to speak. Hello? Better? Okay, thank you. The established pattern and character of the development between Seabank and Gillespie Bridge to the east, which encompasses the application site, is sporadic. The area consists of small groups of 1 or 2 dwellings and a small group of 3 buildings at Craig Lodge containing 4 dwellings, with approximately 200 metres of open countryside separating each established development. The planning proposal does not accord with and enhance the character of the area, and it will create ribbon development. The character of the area from Seabank to the Cock-In has been lost due to the growth of the caravan and chalet park. There is now ribbon development from the Cock-In, which stops at Seabank. The ribbon development is temporary, as it has been created by temporary structures. The area would revert back should these temporary structures be removed. The application site is in an open countryside and cannot be viewed as an infill site due to its size. There is no established boundary to the west of the application site. The proposed development, an urban street scene does not relate to the rural group of buildings at Craig Lodge. With regard to off-site planning history, not listed in this report, a planning application approximately 40 metres to the west of the field containing the application site was submitted for 3 houses between Tynamara and Ellenvannon. This area now houses the caravan chalet park. The application was refused by the council as it constituted ribbon development. This would have created a total of 6 houses. A Scottish Office report supported and upheld the decision to refuse. The road frontage of this site was 110 metres and was viewed by the council as too large an area to be classed as an infill site, and concluded it was an area of open countryside. Furthermore, the Scottish Office reporter concluded that even if this locus had hamlet, now small building group status, the proposal would still have constituted ribbon development. The current application...
30 seconds, Alan.
Thank you. The current application would result in 7 dwellings which will create ribbon development. The committee report is at odds with itself, policy and council position regarding the previous applications at this site and the neighbouring site. Whether or not this application site is within a small buildings group, the policy does not support the development of an urban street scene in a rural location that constitutes ribbon development in the countryside. Therefore, I ask the committee to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Members? Ian?
Sorry, just one brief one. You mentioned temporary structures. What are the temporary structures that you refer to?
Hello. It referred to in Billy's report as the ribbon development, which is the linear ribbon development, which this site or development could be viewed as part of. Therefore, the inference suggested that it's in keeping. That's why I make mention to the previous application site where the chalets are. These are temporary. These are removable. They're not permanent. If they are removed, the site would return back to type, which is sporadic development with approximately a couple of 100 metres between the developed sites. At Craig Lodge on the screen here, we have the original building, the large original building subdivided into 2, and 2 properties built within the curtilage of that site. Total 4 residences within that site currently.
Yeah. Any other members? Nope. No, thank you, Alan. You may take your seat. Could I have Lindsay Brass, please, the agent? You have also 3 minutes, Lindsay, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Okay, thank you. Following the recommendation, I've just got a few small points to make on behalf of my client. With regard to the proposed access road, I discussed the requirement to relocate the road for visibility purposes with Mr Murray, and he suggested that this could be covered by a planning condition and the drawings could be amended under a further application, hence the reason why these haven't been updated. We also note comments in the report regarding the issues with an adoptable road and a preference for a second access, and we would be happy to prepare a further application on this basis. With regard to the scheme design, as mentioned in the report, this is an application for planning permission in principle, which means the scheme is indicative only, and we appreciate the design of the individual houses, the plot layouts and the landscaping of the site would be considered under a further application. We would like to highlight comments in the report that the scheme would neither have any material adverse impact on the character of the building group as existing, nor would it have any significant detrimental impact on the landscape. And we would like to add that under a further application, we would endeavour to prepare a scheme that would complement the existing housing and be acceptable to all parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any other members? You see your seat, Lindsay? Members, any questions? Nope. Right, thanks very much, Lindsay. Member in session. Chair.
I should maybe ask Billy earlier, but given our current permissions, how many houses are we talking about that could actually be constructed on or near this application site?
You mean in terms of extant planning permission?
Yes.
The only ones may be some at Craig Lodge that the owner, Mr Gorst, has referred to, 4 at the moment. As you can see, there is an extensive list of planning permissions at or about Craig Lodge. Without going on site and absolutely establishing which of them have been implemented or not, I couldn't give a definitive answer to that, but our best estimate was probably 4, and I think Mr Gorst has confirmed that.
And there are none pending? Because my concern, Chair, would be that we're creating a whole new state here, a piecemeal, as it were.
I would just, if I may, I would have to emphasise that that would also fall within the small building group. You know, the complex as it exists at Craig Lodge forms part of the small building group.
Patsy?
Yes, can I just, Mr Goss referred to the size of the infill site. Are we limited by what size an infill site is? When does it not become an infill site anymore? When does it become sporadic? And just a clarification on that.
This is not an infill site as such. Normally you would be talking about an infill site within a settlement. The issue here is that this area of land falls within the small building group of Auchenmalg. So there is no size criteria in that policy for a gap site or an area of land.
Now, members?
How many premises then can be built in total currently, Billy, using the small buildings group legislation?
Our conclusion was that 3 would be acceptable in terms of the policy proportion as compared to the existing number of houses in the group.
Andy?
Thanks, Chair. Billy, I should maybe have, through you, Chair, I should maybe have asked Billy this earlier, but on the page 32, all the planning permissions that are currently in place, the last bullet point, what effect does that have on the, if that was to return to holiday occupancy condition, Billy, would that have any bearing in this whatsoever? The last bullet point on page 32, it's the planning history.
Mm-hmm.
The last bullet point. Now that's obviously got, isn't it a permanent situation, it would appear. So if that was to resort back to holiday occupancy conditions, which is obviously must have been the condition of the original planning application. If that was to return back to that, what bearing does that have in this? Or does it have any bearing whatsoever?
I don't think it would have any bearing on it whatsoever. That house was originally granted planning permission as a holiday house. Last year, I think it was 2015, they made an application to set aside that condition, and that was approved, so it is now an unrestricted dwelling house.
Davy?
Thanks, Chair. My problem here is, it's all right saying it's an area that can be built on. There's no identifiable boundaries. So there's nothing to stop them coming back and eventually filling that whole area between Craig Lodge and Seabank. And it's all infill. We're going down the road, and I remember the gentleman raised this issue way back for 2006 when he turned it down. And a ribbon development was spoken about then, further along that road. And this is it coming back to haunt us again. And if we agree to this, they'll be back to fill the road between there and Seabank, and they'll go another way towards Wester Craigs as well. And I think it's a rock that we can do without around our necks. And I would recommend that we refuse this application.
I think we've just got to go with the application we've got now, not going into what may happen in the future, Joe.
No, I appreciate that, Chair, but I think that this is start of continuing ribbon development, if you like. There's no identifiable boundaries to say that's where it'll finish. So on the basis of no, I'll take back, I agree with what you're saying. I shouldn't have said that, and that's no part of the consideration. But I consider this is ribbon development, and we should refuse on that basis.
Ian?
Thank you. I'd like some clarification on what Billy said. When he was asked about what makes a small building group, I think you mentioned 3, and yet if we look at Craig Lodge, you said there are already 4 properties there, plus I believe you said there's some extant permissions in that area as well, which would take considerably above a small building group.
No, I didn't say that a small building group was 3 houses. What I said in answer to a question was there is a criteria in the small building groups policy that only allows a certain proportion of increased housing relative to the existing number of houses in the group. Estimating the existing number of houses in the group and trying to take account of the very complex planning history at Craig Lodge, our estimate was that applying that proportion, the criteria in the small building groups policy, housing in the countryside policy, that 3 would meet that policy.
And could you clarify the position about how many extant permissions there are?
Good idea. I think he replied that he couldn't really do it. I've got an answer.
Paragraph 4.9 covers that.
Chair, can I just clarify again with Billy, in terms of paragraph 4.9, I'm correct in assuming when you've said that the overall small building group of 10, that's if all the existing permissions together with existing houses were to be implemented. Yeah. So that's a total of 10 as a worst case just now.
Can I just one clarification on that? Is that 10 plus 3 should this be approved?
Jane?
It's a question and a sort of statement. I mean, I think we need to be incredibly careful about, particularly about where this small building group is placed. It's on coastline with a raised beach behind. My understanding is that we don't actually have to fill it. We don't have to fill the small building group. We could simply say that the small building group has, in our opinion, reached its maximum numbers because the extent of a small building group is not defined in current guidance. I don't think we're obliged to fill it. I would suggest that the proposal here, because it is absolutely linear, it doesn't in fact enhance the existing small building group, which is, if allowed to continue along the way that it is now, will actually lead to, in effect, ribbon development, because it will be a linear row of houses along that road. I would say that for that reason, actually, we are not obliged to agree this, simply on the basis that it doesn't enhance the existing small building group. Therefore, it does not comply with OP1. No, OP2. That's right.
So, Ivor?
Chair, I take a different view. If you look at the settlement Auchenmalg, it's single houses facing onto a road. A group at this end. I would actually say grouping houses would make it out of sort of keeping with the area. Most of our villages started off as ribbon development and are deemed quite attractive in the country. The one that was near me, Amesfield's a single row of houses up a track with every house entering onto the street. I have no problem with this one. The only issue I have is, do we still have small building groups with available sites, small building groups that have been filled? Because if we do the 3 here, which Billy says is within the parameters of the how many are there and how many are going, the thing is, next one that comes in for next door could be 4, which, is that what happens, or does this one then move on to a site that doesn't have sites available because we've filled them all? But I'm quite happy to actually allow the 3 houses in this site, and I would move so.
Andy?
Through you, Chair, I'm just wondering, I'm picking up, it's at 4.10 on page 36, and the quote is that the degree of conflict with some aspects of supplementary guidance. Could we get a wee bit more clarity on just exactly what you mean by that, Billy? Because it's a bit too technical for me, I'm afraid.
I think our feeling was that there was a degree of, on the issue of ribbon development, there was, it was very much an on-balance conclusion there. So I think that's mainly where we were referring to the slight element of conflict.
Ian?
I would just second Councillor Hislop for the reasons given in the report.
Did you get did you second David, Jen?
Yes, I think I did, probably.
No.
Through you, Chair, I don't think it was formally seconded, but so I would.
In a minute.
I would suggest that Councillor Hislop has got a motion, and perhaps we could then take the Councillor McKee's motion as the amendment.
David?
Sorry about that, Chair. Councillor Hislop mentioned Auchenmalg there. Is this whole area covered as being under the name of Auchenmalg? On the map, there's Auchenmalg Hill, Auchenmalg Farm, and Auchenmalg up in the top left beside Broom Park.
Billy?
Auchenmalg was the name attributed to that small building group when the committee made the decision to allocate it as a small building group. There is another small building group which is called Auchenmalg Bridge. So it was to differentiate it from Auchenmalg Bridge.
Right. Jane?
Can anyone remember whether it was with or against officer recommendation?
It was against officer recommendation.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. The topography of a raised beach makes it almost inevitable that you're going to have linear development. It's impossible to escape that if you're building on a raised beach. And for that reason, I would be inclined to support Councillor Hislop.
We'll go to the vote. You got the vote? 5. clarify.
Can I just be clear on what the, I think it's the amendment now, Lucy, for refusal would be?
Through you, Chair, I have it as on the basis that there's no identifiable boundary. Is that correct?
It's in the ribbon development.
And I think Councillor Maitland made some mention of, was it OP1?
OP2, actually.
OP2,
yes,
sorry.
Yes, that's right.
Can I maybe suggest that it's, from what Billy had said, it's maybe the fact it would be contrary to the supplementary guidance to policy H3, housing in the countryside, that your concern is about the ribbon of development. That's maybe the appropriate policy to refer it to.
Thank you for pointing out the policy. The principle behind it was exactly, I think I've been quite clear that it's the ribbon development that is the problem here, the pattern. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion proposed by Councillor Hislop and seconded by Councillor Dick to approve the application as per, subject to conditions as per the report. And I have an amendment proposed by Councillor McKee and seconded by Councillor Maitland to refuse the application on the basis that there are no identifiable boundaries, it is contrary to H3 housing in the countryside policy, and that there is danger that it could end up being a ribbon development. Councillor Martin.
Motion.
Councillor Dempster.
Amendment.
Councillor Blake.
Amendment.
Councillor Dick.
Motion.
Councillor Dryborough.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Motion.
Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Councillor Hislop.
Motion.
Councillor Maitland.
Amendment.
Councillor McCoughtry.
Motion.
Councillor McComb.
Motion.
Councillor McKee.
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson.
Motion.
And I can confirm that the motion carries with 8 votes to 5, and the decision is that the application will be approved, subject to conditions as per the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Lucy. Now, getting on, quite a big few to go. I think we'll take a break just now for lunch. And
just put my apologies in because I'm having to go to another meeting this afternoon. Thank you.
Same, Jim will be taking the chair because I've got to go.
Thank you.
Applications Committee. We come to item 7 on the agenda, which is a consultation regarding an application made under section 36 of the Electricity Act 1989 for the formation of a pumped storage hydro scheme, maximum capacity 400 megawatts at Glenmucklock, 4 kilometres west of Kirkcudbright, Sanquhar. The application types are section 3 consultation. The recommendation is there's no objections, and the case officer is Andrew Robinson. If you could, Tracy, could you shut the curtains, please? Andrew's anxious that members see the detail and the daylights affecting this particular OHP there. So if you can close the curtains, that'd be fine. Thanks very much. And Andrew, at your time, just take us through your presentation, please.
Okay, right. Yes. Okay, yeah. Okay, the council's been consulted on this application from the Scottish Government for a proposed pump storage hydro scheme at the Glenmucklock surface coal mine near Kirkcudbright. And the council's role in this is acting as a consultee, not a decision maker, where the council can either raise objections, provide comments on the proposal, or it can raise an objection to the development. And the application site is located around 3.5 kilometres northwest of Kirkcudbright, just down there. And the site extends to around 733 hectares. And access to the site is off a minor unclassified road leading off the A76, which also serves the existing surface coal mine. And the proposal, this shows the proposed site layout, which essentially comprises two reservoirs. You've got an upper reservoir, which would be newly formed into the landscape, and a lower reservoir, which would actually be formed in an existing excavated area of the surface coal mine. There's effectively a big void in the ground where it is at the moment. So this is the site layout which shows this. So you've got the upper reservoir, and this is the dam face, which we'll show a bit more detail of in a second. It'll be connected by a penstock pipe, and then you've got a lower reservoir as well. So a bit more detail of the upper reservoir. The dimensions of that are contained within the report, including depth as well, just to give an idea of the extent of its appearance. And this is the lower reservoir as well, which will also contain, that's where all the generating machinery will be to generate the power. So this is a cross-section through the site. It's an illustrated cross-section, so it's not necessarily to scale, but it gives a good idea of what the proposal is. So you've got the upper reservoir on the left-hand side. This is the dam embankment, and then you've got the lower reservoir, and this is all of the substation buildings and where all the electricity would be generated. A bit more detail of the upper reservoir. They'll both have like a concrete intake formed within the reservoir. A lot of that will be contained within that though. And this is the lower reservoir as well. And again, you can just see the illustrated plant and machinery in the generating house. And this slide actually shows how it operates really. So on the left-hand side, you've got what's been called the generation mode. So water will go down into the lower reservoir, and with the water going through, that's what will generate the electricity. The turbine, that's the one, yeah. Turbines will generate the electricity from the water. And then the second stage will be the pumping mode, where the water will be allowed to pump back up to the upper reservoir when no electricity is needed, and then it can go through a cycle again. Within the report, it talks about there's a triple SI runs through the site, the Lockerbie burn triple SI. The impact on this feature is referred to in paragraph 4.32 of the report. Essentially, as part of the approved coal mining operations, the excavation of this area was allowed as part of that, but there is a requirement from Scottish Natural Heritage for that to be restored. So there's a condition recommended on this of the details of the restoration scheme of this as part of this scheme. The current workings in the site, it's still an operational site at the moment, so there is coal mining operations still ongoing. All right, okay, there's that there. So there's still part of a restoration scheme, and that shows the current situation. And that was this is a site progress plan, which is part of the current approval. But this proposal in front of you is essentially an alternative restoration scheme. And the site photographs, this is the existing appearance of the site, which is contained within the environmental statement. And going on now to the visibility. So this actually shows the visibility of the upper reservoir. So the pink shows the extent of the visibility of the reservoir in the wide area. That will be the most visible part of the scheme, because the lower reservoir is actually, as can be shown there, is much more localized in terms of impact. There are cumulative developments associated with this. The Glenmucklock 8 wind turbine wind farm was approved last month. That's highlighted in red. Leithen's wind farm, which is actually within the East Ayrshire boundary, is currently being determined by Scottish ministers at the moment. That application is still undetermined. And these are the viewpoints of the site, so of what they will appear. So this is an existing viewpoint. We've got the photo montage at the top, and then at the bottom where there'll be the proposal will be seen. So if you can just see the extent of the change as part of the proposal. The upper reservoir is up here, the lower is just beyond there. The bottom slides actually show the way that the wind farms, surrounding wind farms, will appear as part of the scheme as well. Although separate development, they're still read in context with each other. This one probably shows a bit more of some of the concerns raised by the landscape architect in SNH in terms of the top embankment, where it's considered that it will appear quite artificial. So you can just see at the top here the difference between what's existing and what's proposed. So one of the recommendations is to look at the design of that a little bit more to see if it can be fitted into the landscape a bit better. This is from the east, St. Colonel's Church, which is an archaeological feature near the site. And again, you can just see the difference between the two. This is taken from a higher viewpoint at Totholes Hill. So it's looking down at the site, actually, so it gives quite a good indication of how it will appear. And this is taken on a forestry track leading away from the A76. And you can actually see this is the current appearance of the site from the distance. Okay, yeah, sorry, that's fine. I'm trying. Okay. If you want, I can go back and if there's any, if you wanted to. So this is taken from the same point, and there you go. That's just showing it from that viewpoint as well. And this is from the nearest settlement, Kellerholm, and you'll just be able to see the proposal there in the landscape. And this is the final one. This is taken from the west of the site on a higher ground, and it will be just proven just to the right there. And this one at the bottom shows how the surrounding wind energy development would appear alongside it as well. So in conclusion, officers are recommending no objections are raised. There is recommendation about improving the visual appearance of the top reservoir, but other than that, the recommendation is for no objections.
Thanks, Andrew. In the dark, we can do with the visuals, and then we can go back to other questions for the officer after that. Tom?
Just for clarity, I take it it's like all the other ones in the same sort of vein. It only operates at a peak period and generates during a peak period, and it gets payment for that, and then it waits for an off-peak period, taps into the off-peak electricity to pump it back to the top, and that's how it's making its money between the pumping, generating at peak and pumping back up the off-peak.
That's largely correct, yes.
Thanks, Tom. You switch your mic off, please. Ian?
Yeah, if we can go back to the slide that shows the access road into the site, I seem to recall that from a recent consideration on the wind turbines, that was possibly the same route into the wind turbine site. And I just wonder about the cumulative effect on the traffic if this proposal goes ahead as well.
That's correct. There is potential cumulative impacts, and that's why there's a condition recommending a construction environment management plan. There's a traffic management plan, and at the bottom it's condition 6. Details of any phasing that may be required to mitigate against the cumulative impact of construction traffic overlooking with the existing mining operations and the proposed Glenmucklock wind farm scheme. So it has been incorporated into the condition.
Thanks, Ian. David McKee, and then Jane, followed by Jim McComan.
Given it sometimes rains in this area, and I'm not sure how these dams are being filled, when you've got an excess of water, how are you going to release that water? And I would assume eventually it'll run into the Nith. And also, can we be sure that the mining site where the dam's going to be in there, that water's going to be kept clean? And how are they going to do that?
Andrew, one or two questions there.
I'm not sure about the the technical operation in terms of like the first point, in terms of how it operates with the River Nith, although that's something the applicant has to get approval from with SEPA. But on the second point, that has been incorporated in one of the conditions in terms of a material management plan. There was concern from SEPA that some of the material that's been moved at the site it's unknown at this stage where some of the material that might be contaminated where it's been moved to. So there's a requirement for, which condition is it? It is yeah, this is an environmental management plan as part of condition 2. It is an issue that's been referred to in the hydrology section of the report, which is in sections between sections 4.12 and 4.16, and essentially it's paragraph 4.15, which responds to the issue that you've raised about contaminants in the material and ensuring that it doesn't get in the water supply.
Thanks, Andrew. And I would presume that Jim Henderson or other members of the District Salmon Fisheries Board will be very interested in the outfall, and I'm quite sure they'll be scrutinised how this scheme is managed.
Can I just follow up on that, Chair? Because I think it was an issue last year where it was felt that there was a dam opened further up the Nith, which increased the flooding down here. And that's something that I think we'd need to try and safeguard against with this. If they need to unload water, they've got to make sure that everywhere else is clear and can take it.
Yeah, I think that was a myth joke. That was taken up by the council and by the local community. There was an allegation that Scottish Water had opened the new Cumnacarfton Reservoir to relieve pressure on the dam, but it was purely mythical. It wasn't true. But you're quite right. It's something that we'll take on board, because the last thing we want is to contaminate or impact in other communities. This should be a standalone a procedure that doesn't cause damage and impact neither in the environment nor in the River Nith itself. Jane?
It's not completely clear to me about how we are dealing with the visual impact of the looking at these conditions. Yes, the lumpy bit along the crest. You know, they talk about the crest being redesigned, or and it's not entirely clear to me as to how we propose to deal with that. Whether we get any more bite at that.
Andrew?
Sorry, maybe I missed it.
We have attached it as a condition in condition 16, unless and until details of planting and redesign, regrading of the slope surrounding the lip of the upper reservoir. So we have attached it there in condition 16. There is quite a lot of details that will be required for this proposal by conditions, so there will be quite a lot of extra information submitted. But that's what we propose as a condition. But if there's anything further you want to add to that, then.
Well, if I could just say, 16 deals with the slope and planting. I think it's not actually dealing with the fact that you had that flat right across. It's up there in the visuals. That it was a very flat, lumpy view of the crest. And I don't know how you can, or whether you can actually mitigate against that, because it looks very man-made.
I'll get David to come in, but what we'll maybe do, Jane, is revisit that at the determination if we agree to support the application. If you're happy with that, we'll deal with it at the very end when we're about to make a determination, Jane. If you could remember, hey, Lucy, we're going to discuss the crest. Hey, I've got Jim McComb.
Thanks, Chair. I take it, Andrew, the subsurface geology has all been checked out here. There are no issues, for instance, with underground coal workings, or indeed with the geological fault which the Lagry burn runs through.
The whole site that's excavated was part of the Roger pit. It was a stoop room arrangement. I'm very familiar with it, but Andrew, respond to your question, Jim. Or David.
Well, I was going to say, Chair, you probably have far better knowledge of this, but to the best of my knowledge, the vicinity here is actually, certainly the void at the bottom has only been subject to open cast mining, to my knowledge. The area to the top, I'll bow to your superior knowledge.
Well, I wouldn't want to bore you, but I used to work down Fald Head, and we walked the air course once a month with a safety officer. And we walked from Fald Head and came out in the Lagry Glen and the Roger pit, or the Roger pit was in that area as well. They're linked together. So there are underground workings that stretch from that site right out through to Kirkconnel. But I would guess that the amount of effort and work that's gone into this, there'll be more than enough assessment have been done to ensure that there's no impact beyond the immediate site. But certainly it does form part of a larger coal mining area that was worked for a very long number of years. David?
Sorry, Chair, just to clarify again, that really all that we as a council are looking at with this is the council input to this. So you're talking about local roads, archaeology, environmental health, the visual impact. All the other aspects of it will be dealt with by the Scottish Government and the other consultations they'll be carrying out with SEPA, SNH, Coal Authority, you name it. They will carry out those ones. So our response to this is actually quite limited. Unlike a planning application, we don't have to tie down every element of it.
And there are countless maps available, Jim, and they'll be able to be found on the internet that will illustrate exactly where the workings are. But David's right, there'll be a very, very intense scrutiny because of the former activity in that area. Hey, I've got Patsy and then Ian Dick.
Well, my question's probably rather irrelevant, but I'm just quite interested. Is there any sort of a dam working, you know, like you can let water out or in when you get a lot of water? Because that, if you look at that section here, it is extremely flat and down and flat and down, and that's all very well when the rainfall is. But if you get a lot of rainfall, or and I'm not entirely sure where the upper reservoir is being fed from either. It's there already, is it? The upper reservoir, it's not being made. So therefore, it must be being fed by something off the hills or whatever, I don't know, or a spring or whatever. But looking at that, I'm just thinking about. I've got a very, 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 very small lock at home, but if we get too much rain, we have to twig something and let water out. I mean, is there any way that they're going to be able to do that here or not, which would impact on the rivers and the burns and things?
It might help if you flick back to one of the images where the quarrying was quite apparent, and you can see the depth. No, further back yet, Andrew. Keep back yet. Keep going back.
And we do have it on the D when they do let the water
Andrew will respond
down.
to you, Patsy, but there's a huge hole in the ground that is only partially filled with water, and I think that's the bottom of the two reservoirs. It took a huge amount of water to fill them up. I thought you had it on slides somewhere, Andrew. That.
I realise it's not part of our thing, but I'm just quite interested.
Andrew or David will just answer your question in more detail, Patsy.
I was involved at the pre-application stage, and that issue was actually raised with the meeting with the Scottish Government. And as I recall, unless it's significantly changed since my involvement, it was a closed system. So basically, you had the void at the bottom that you're seeing in the top slide there, a new reservoir being formed where I think they're actually going to have to even pump water into that to fill it up to begin with. Thereafter, you've got the two which are then going between themselves within a certain parameter. They'll not allow it to get beyond that. But as I understand as well, at the lower void, there would be a potential for outfall in those circumstances where there's too much water coming into the system to then, under a controlled circumstance, allow that out. But the intention is really for it to be, as far as possible, a closed system between the two reservoirs.
Thanks, Patsy. Ian Dick.
Thanks, Chair. Just with regards to the mitigation of the landscaping and whatnot, I take it the current restoration work will be part of that, because as far as I can understand, much has been done already, and a lot of any visual impact will, apart from any conditions that are set here, there will be some mitigation by that restoration work. Can I also ask, I noticed in the last report when we dealt with the turbines, the last one there's much made of the the archaeologist's report regarding the St Connell's Church, which I appreciate is quite an important site. But am I right in saying it's essentially the ruins of a church on an old graveyard? And I just felt that yes, of course, we need to take into account the impact on archaeological sites, but it felt to me as if there was a bit of an overplay about the visual impact on that particular site. I just wonder if you want to maybe comment on that.
Mine, it's about half a mile or a mile away from there, and it's in a little valley. But Andrew or David?
The archaeologist's response is contained in section 2, and it does refer to the impact on that. I'll just refer you to it. Essentially, on that particular feature, the archaeologist doesn't consider that the impact would be significant on that particular one. There is the St Connell's Cross, which is located within 30 metres of the construction area, so not the church, but there's a little cross feature in the landscape which would be located. But there is a condition attached in terms of archaeological implementation of a programme of archaeological work is condition 10. So essentially the impact was not considered significant.
As an aside, I think, if anything, this should be a precursor to a better access being created, because I'll bet you half the folk in Kirkcudbright couldn't have found St Connell's Cross, and very few of them have gone to the church because they're really difficult to get access. So I wouldn't want to belittle it, but it should be enforced in the discussions that what they should be doing is creating a better access so the public can actually get to these important sites and get better access to them, because they're really quite remote and difficult to find. Did you want to come back, Ian?
If you wouldn't mind, Chair, thanks. I mean, I've made this point before, actually. One of the advantages for these archaeological sites of a planning application of this nature is, as you rightly say, most people probably never heard of them. Now, because of the application, it's in the public domain. And as you say, there's the opportunity now to actually produce access. I think there was one in the Mackers, the White Cairn site, which, I mean, for all the time I've lived in Wickenshire, I'd never heard of until, well, now we've got, not only has it been identified, but you've got access to it. So I think it's quite advantageous where you have these archaeological sites, part of a planning application for these very reasons. Could I just return to my first point there, that the current restoration work?
Yes, I mean, basically the open cast coal mining was subject to a restoration scheme, and a high percentage of that has already been done. Certainly all that area across to the south and the west has been done. But Hargreaves were still, until very recently, actively coaling at the site. They have now stopped on the site, and what the intention is that there is still money within the council's account to actually ensure that is finished from what we called in from the bond. So even if this, for some reason, the proposal in front of you today doesn't go ahead, then it will be restored. But as Andrew was saying, this is almost like an alternative restoration scheme where you're leaving the void, you're taking parts of the area that have just finished coaling and restoring them back into the hillside, but having the dam as well. So irrespective of whether this goes ahead or not, yes, there are plans in place for the restoration.
I think it shouldn't be confused that it'll not be a complete restoration. The money doesn't cover that. It'll be a partial or the majority of the site. It would leave some archaeological features exposed, but the feeling was that would assist bird nesting, etc., etc. So it wasn't considered to be a big issue, even if this doesn't go ahead. If members are finished with the slides, then can I ask if the lights be put back on and the windows open, and if we're okay, just waiting the wedding steak now, Tom. So if that discussions are finished in relation to questions for the officers, we're going into session, and Jane has a point about one particular element of it, and then actually wants to come in. Jane, you want to come back on the point about?
Well, it was really just how we deal with the crest. I think Andrew had one of the slides up there, And it's just that 16, I don't think, talks about the crest. It just talks about the sloping and the, redesign, regrading of the slope. But I thought that the visual that we had up there was, yes, really quite flat. And
Chair, yes, I agree with that. But if you actually read on, it's not just the slope surrounding the lip of the upper reservoir so as to better visually integrate the reservoir into the surrounding topography. So clearly what we're looking for there is exactly what you're talking about, because the slides to me made it very clear that it was almost like a tabletop situation here, whereas the hills are generally quite rolling, and we're looking for something to better integrate it.
You content with that, Janai? Okay, if that's the case, actually we're in session.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, I'm pretty excited about this because it's something that's electricity generation at much higher than what them big whirly things actually produce, and it's a constant base load type opportunity. With the turbines, you can actually plug into the ancillary pumps, so they can actually continuously pump the water up back up the hill anyway, so there isn't a requirement to have at low peak times and things like that. It can continually do that, depending on the type of equipment that you actually get. So I'm pretty excited about this particular thing, and I'd love to see more of them, to tell you, because I think it would reduce flooding in the area as well. So I'm happy to go with the recommendations on this one, Chair.
Thanks, Archie. Ian?
I'll certainly second that. Can I just ask, will this have an impact on Dumfries and Galloway's carbon tax? And if so, do we know how much it will mitigate?
David?
I honestly don't know, but it certainly won't hinder it, put it that way. I think it could only improve the situation if you look at the level of generation here, yes.
Thanks, Ian. If no member is otherwise minded, can we go with the officer recommendation? Okay, Lucy, can you confirm the decision of the committee, please?
Committee have decided to raise no objections in relation to this consultation.
Thanks, Lucy. We'll go to item 8. The erection of timber treatment and resaw building with canopied timber drying area and office. Erection of saw shop, maintenance building, installation of weighbridge, formation of new roundabout and access and associated works and landscaping at timber development site, Hangingshaw, Johnstonebridge, Lockerbie. Reference number 16/P/4/008. The application type full planning permission. The recommendation is approved subject to conditions, and the case officer is Andrew Robinson. Andrew, will you take us through your presentation again, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an application for effectively a satellite extension of James Jones's timber processing factory, which is situated about 2 kilometres away from this site at Stevens Croft. So this is the application site. It's just about 2 kilometres south of Johnstonebridge services, adjacent to the M74 motorway. And this is the application site with the surrounding features. So there's the motorway, there's the trunk road next to it, which actually serves the site, and it's also bounded by the West Coast Railway line on the eastern boundary. And Lockerbie, an existing lorry stop, is located to the north of the site. So this is the application site from the road. It's just on the right-hand side there. It's just a large expanse of agricultural scrubland, if you like. It's a site that extends to around about 8 hectares, so it's a large site. And land levels on the site, as you can see, are flat. So here's just some different shots. This is taken at the southern end, looking right up, and the lorry stop is right in the distance. And just some panoramics just to show. There are some neighbouring properties adjacent to the site, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail towards the end of the presentation. And the site itself is an allocated business and industry site in the local development plan, and this proposal actually represents taking up quite a large part of this allocation. So there is a master plan for the site that's been submitted with the application. So the development here is actually this area here. You've got the existing lorry stop here, and there is a northern part to the site which is allocated for future development. So in terms of this development, it will consist of a new roundabout into the site, an access road, a lorry park, and the main element of the proposal is a resaw and timber building. So there's resawing equipment and treatment of the wood and storage area for the timber, the finished timber products to be stored at this site. This just shows it in a bit more detail because the previous plan's quite large. So that's effectively it. The building proposes about 245 metres in length by about 120 metres at its widest point in width. So it's quite a large building proposed for the site. That's the lorry vehicle, the lorry park that's proposed adjacent to it, and a saw shop in the corner of the site. The new roundabout proposed to access the site. Land levels will be raised slightly from existing levels, but there's a cross section which just shows. You can just see a hashed line along the bottom there. That's the existing, and that's the proposed levels. This just shows quite an interesting shot of how the development will appear in sort of a photo montage, if you like, of the site, and a satellite view. It has the lorry stop to the north and some buildings, residential buildings just there. Landscaping is quite a significant part of this proposal. So there has been a master plan layout submitted with this. A lot of landscaping is proposed along what is the western boundary of the site, and this cross section is south to north through the site. But really, you can see a landscaping bund that's proposed to be formed on the western boundary there, which is essentially just along from effectively where the roundabout is, along that western boundary there, where the neighbouring properties are. That just shows it in a bit more detail. What the landscaping bund would comprise. This is the proposed resaw treatment building. That's where the main operations will be. A lot of it will be open-sided, where the applicant can store their timber products. At the moment, at their current site, a lot of it is stored in an open yard. So a lot of this proposal is to actually create covered areas for them to store their products. It's just a cross section through the site, just showing the main building. This is the saw shop building, which is proposed in the southeastern corner of the site. It's quite a small element of the proposal in comparison to the others. In the final photographs, this is effectively where the lorry park is proposed. The access road is proposed along the railway line, and quite an important part of this proposal, the access road is shown to connect to the site allocated to the north as well. That's just looking back towards where the entrance is. This is looking west across the site. You can just see where there's some properties on the western boundary. There's a slight raise in land levels there, which will be incorporated into the landscape scheme. And that's looking towards the existing lorry park. And that's back across the site. It just gives a bit of an impression of the size of the site. And again, this is taken at the back of the residential properties. Now, I said these are some converted properties which were part of Hangingshaw Farm that have been converted into residential. I think they're holiday accommodation at the moment, but they're still a noise sensitive property, and that's just showing the appearance of them and the boundary treatment at the site at the moment. That's at that property, at those properties. And that's a bit more of the landscaping and boundary treatment there at the moment. These are the properties on to the west of the site, which are quite close to the site. And in terms of the boundary treatment, that's what's there at the moment. And this is the view of the site from the property. So the land levels sort of raise upwards to the back of these properties, and then the site will be will be beyond there, and then that's just again looking from one of those properties towards the lorry stop. And one of the reasons I've referred to the property is you'll see in the report there was we said that we'd present a noise report to you on the day of the committee. At the time of writing the report, we didn't have it. We've got the contents of that report, and I can what the report shows is in terms of impact, we were keen to ensure that there would be no adverse noise impact to those properties. And what the noise report has actually found is that this location has a high background noise of about 60 decibels during the day, which goes down to anywhere between 45 to 54 decibels at night. The noise report concludes that during the daytime, there'll be no noise above the background noise level from the development. There may be some at night time in terms of operation from the equipment in the building if roller shutter doors are open. There's an extraction system attached to the building which could give rise to noise as well at night time if it doesn't have an acoustic barrier around it, and also about noise from HGV and forklift movement. So we've actually proposed to attach 2 noise conditions, which I can explain a bit more when you're in session, if you like. But we've got that assessment. So now that we've got that information, we are recommending approval subject to 2 additional noise conditions than what's been stated in the report before you.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Questions for the case officer before we get into session? Stephen?
Thank you. Waste of time really, because he's just explained that he's going to deal with it when we go into session. It was just to do with noise conditions, but obviously you're going to deal with that. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. Anyone else for questions, case officer? In that case, we are in session. To save anybody asking, can you just confirm what the 2 noise conditions might be, Andrew, please?
Yes, Chair. There will be a noise condition essentially saying that all plant and machinery and vehicular movements in the site shall be operated so that the development shall not exceed the background noise level at those nearest properties referred to. And then there will be a second condition, which is requiring a noise management plan to ensure compliance with that noise limit stipulated in that condition. And within that plan, it shall also include details of monitoring equipment to be used, locations, monitoring intervals, and essentially method of recording and verifying that attenuation measures are satisfactory. So there'll be an ongoing noise management program as part of the condition. But what's also been stipulated is the plan has to include the noise attenuation measures in relation to ensuring roller shutter doors are remain closed during the operation of the development at night. Details on the acoustic barrier around the dust extraction system, and also provision to manage noise from HGVs and forklift vehicular movement within the timber storage yard areas. And that's particularly with regards to hours of operation and ensuring that reversing alarms from those vehicles are not heard at the nearest noise-sensitive properties.
Thanks, Andrew. Just as a throwaway line, we're always advised that we shouldn't place conditions that we can't enforce. How do we monitor that kind of arrangement? Doors closed at night, etc., etc.
It's a good question, and that's why, as a standalone condition, it would raise issues of how it would be enforced. The best mechanism that we can offer is to have it as part of a noise management plan, which is to be adhered to with the condition, along with other mitigation measures. There is. Do you want to?
David, you continue.
I mean, beyond that, if there are breaches of condition, they are very quickly brought to our attention by neighbours, and we can then investigate it. Certainly in this case, it would be in conjunction with environmental health officers, where we would be ensuring that the noise limits were being maintained. Certainly we've had in the vicinity, from time to time, we've had complaints about noise at Stevens Croft, and we've been able to investigate those and pursue those. And certainly we've found the applicant actually to be very good and assisting with us anytime there has been a noise issue raised.
Thanks, David. Okay, members, Archie.
Actually, I mean, I've got no problem with the recommendations, but I'm looking at opportunities here. Obviously, it's right next to the rail line, and the maintenance of the rail line, of course, is going to be something that's quite big in the future. Obviously, if they're going to improve any maintenance, you know if there's been any discussion. I mean, I'm happy to go with the recommendations in this particular case, but you know if there's been any discussions with rail track or whatever it is it runs.
I don't imagine I've formed part of the application, but David.
No, not to my knowledge, but I mean, clearly where you are going to be adjacent to a rail line, there is an onus on the landowner, if they're doing any development, to contact Network Rail and just make sure it's not going to be impeding their operations.
No, I think actually putting it the other way round about, it would be an opportunity for them to put kit there and access the rail for maintenance purposes. I think that's what he was suggesting.
That way round, no, we haven't had any involvement that way round.
Thanks for that, David. Well, we have a recommendation. We go with it or approve it. Stephen, and then Jane.
Thank you. Just a couple of points. One is to do with additional jobs. I know there's in the report it alludes to the securing of existing jobs, etc. It'd be interesting to see the kind of contribution it'll make in terms of additional employment, perhaps, and also just on lighting. Obviously, any operation needs light in which to operate. However, I think if there could be some consideration, perhaps, to manage the lighting so it doesn't, it's not pointing in the wrong direction, basically, so it's sufficient to allow operations to be carried out, but not create a pollution, if you like, for neighbouring residents or road users.
And that'll form part of the conditions.
Yes, Chairman, that's quite happy to attach an additional condition in addition to the other two Andrews mentioned, if that's what the committee would like. There's a standard condition about that sort of thing, so there'll be no problem. It probably is worth saying as well that given the proximity to the A74M trunk road, you probably want to have a condition to ensure there's no dazzling of traffic as well.
Thanks, Stephen. Jane, you want to come back? Okay.
No, it was just the first part, which is the additional number of employment opportunities above and beyond the 150 mentioned in the report that would be secured.
I thought that might be an observation, because if there's no offered any, then there's nothing we can do about it. We can't make that a condition anyway. But Andrew or David, do you want to comment on that?
Sorry, I was still looking for any conditions we had about lighting. Could you repeat that one? Sorry.
The lighting one was more to do with condition. The first part of the question was actually relating to, is there any information on additional employment as opposed to the securing of the 150 existing?
There isn't. Having spoken to the applicant, this site this proposal is to generate probably around about 15 to 20 jobs, but it's actually part of a longer term vision of the development of this site. They're looking to pursue opportunities at their existing site for expansion, and this is very much helping them to free up space at their existing site to look at future development opportunities at that site.
Thanks, Stephen. Jane?
I'm just curious to know about the classification of this site. This is identified as industrial land, and it seems to be being improved industrial and warehouse park. It doesn't absolutely make it clear to me whether or not you would expect to have more noise or less noise on this particular park. What's the classification of this industrial? Is it? And I can never remember how this actually works. Whether everything else bar a classification of 4, which is supposed to be, I think, suitable for being next to housing, if you see what I mean. Because this comes after the houses are there, so.
I can assist with that because I actually was involved with the original outline application, and this was seen as a general industrial and warehousing, so it was going to be class 5 and 6. It was definitely not restricted to only class 4. It was a recognition of the fact that it was a high noise background, sorry, say that again, a high background noise level already there in the context with the motorway and the main rail line beside it, that it justified it being a general industrial.
You want to come back, Jane?
Well, yes. If it is then 5 or 6, I'm not absolutely certain whether we are in a position to put a condition on noise, because there is an expectation, my understanding, that the new noise regulations actually place less restriction than was previously the case with respect to noise on an existing, when there is an existing industrial premises.
David?
Again, in the LDP, there is actually in the allocation of the site, there is a requirement for that, there was the exact wording of it. Yes, it does actually ensure that development proposals need to demonstrate that they will not have any significant adverse impact on the residential amenities of nearby houses. So notwithstanding the general industrial identification of it, you still shouldn't be going out of your way to cause a statutory nuisance. And that's why we are looking to actually ensure that those conditions be put on.
Thanks, Jane. Okay. In that case, we have a proposal that we go with the officer recommendation. Are there any contrary proposals? Stephen? You're happy to second it. So there's a proposal from Archie to approve, seconded by Stephen Thompson. Do we have any counter proposals? Then you just want to conclude, David, and I'll ask Lucy to
So Andrew's just pointing out to me, if members want to have a look on page 88 at condition 6, that's actually a condition about the lighting, which Transport Scotland have requested. So I dare say we could actually augment that one a bit further and just have about the light pollution issue with it as well.
So members are happy with the augmenting of condition 6, and we've agreed to go with the recommendation. Can you just confirm the decision of the committee, Lucy, please?
Members have agreed to go with the recommendation as per the report to approve subject to conditions, and also augmenting condition 6 in relation to the issue of light pollution, the dazzling of the traffic, and also the noise condition.
Thanks, Lucy. Go to item 9. Formation of vehicular access and hard standing to front of dwelling house at Waverton, 1 Pleasance Avenue, Dumfries. Reference number 16/P/3/0161. Application type full planning permission. Recommendations to refuse. Case officers Tory Might, and this was called in by Councillor McCoy. Tory, just whenever you're ready, take us through your presentation, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. This is the application for the formation of vehicular access from the A756 road and formation of hard standing to the front of the dwelling house at number 1 Pleasance Avenue. We've got some previous planning history at this site, where there was a very similar application, again for the formation of vehicular access and hard standing to the front of the dwelling house. That was in 2005. That application was refused by the Nithsdale Area Committee, and subsequently an appeal was submitted to the Scottish Ministers, which was dismissed in 2006. So we've got the application site here, the area which is the proposed parking area is to be formed is outlined in red there on the plan, and the site is located approximately 33 metres southwest of the junction of Stranraer Road, St Michael's Bridge and Church Street. So you can just outside that plan there. And then we've got the block plan here, which shows the proposed site. And the off-street parking area, it would be located obviously to the front of the dwelling house here. And it would measure 4 meters in depth, and that would be from the external wall of the house to the edge of the footway. And it would measure 7.3 meters in width. And there's, at the moment, there's an existing wall and gate to be removed there, as you can see in this picture. So it's just the house to the left in the picture, the semi-detached dwelling there. So yeah, that small wall and pedestrian gate would be removed. And here we've got a more close-up view of the garden or curtilage at the moment. It's mainly laid to lawn, and you've got the wall again there. And here we've got a picture of Pleasance Avenue looking down to the southwest there. And you can see a few other similar parking situations down the street there, where there are cars parked in the front curtilage. And here we've got a view looking towards the junction to the northeast. So the junction is just on top of the road there. You can see one of the lights. And here's another view towards the junction. Right, so the Roads Authority were consulted on this application, and they have objected to the proposal. Obviously, with it being an access, the overriding consideration in terms of this proposal is in terms of road safety. And it is considered that the restricted dimension of the proposed parking area would not provide an on-site turning area and would result in awkward manoeuvring for vehicles entering and exiting the parking area onto an A-class road in close proximity to light-controlled junction. The proposal is therefore considered unsatisfactory in terms of road safety, and it's therefore recommended for refusal.
Thanks very much, Doyle, and I'm sure the next time you present a case, members will start talking in the middle of it. We've also got Ken Druitt here from the Roads Department, so we'll just have them together if there are any questions for officers of either Torrell or Ken. Members have any questions? Ian Dick and then Jock McKee.
I was just wondering, you had a slide up there with other houses that had hard stands and vehicular access. Is that the case? Yeah. So why have they got hard stands for vehicular access? And I mean, well, first of all, are the dimensions between the road and the front of the house the same as this particular application? In which case, why did they get them and this one's being recommended for refusal?
I can just hear David saying 2 rights don't make a wrong, or 2 wrongs don't make a right. David?
I was actually going to say, draw members' attention to paragraph 4.5 on page 95, which actually explains that there are another number of instances along the street. 3 and 5 are the ones I think you can actually see in the photo there. They were approved in 2003 and 2002, respectively, contrary to officer recommendation.
If you're happy with that, Ian, Jock McKee?
I apologise to the officer for talking when she was talking to us, Chair. What's the width of the path down the side of the house? Is there any width there at all?
Torrell?
I don't think there would be enough width for any car to go down there. That's pretty much the width. Maybe a bit wider than it might be on the, it would be on the plan. Not wide enough for a car. No.
Thanks, Joe. Stephen?
Just on the houses on the others, the even numbered houses on the other side of the street, what's the sort of off-street parking situation there? And I think round the corner, is it, I don't know if it'd be Triqueer, but the other way that goes up towards the museum, I think there's a similar off-street parking there. And obviously it's back to the 2 wrongs don't make a right thing, but just on the even numbers, what's the sort of incidence or number of off-street parking opportunities already in place there?
Torrell?
Yeah, I should maybe have included a picture of that. Number 2 has got an access similar, but they have more space. Yeah, and there's a garage there as well. So there are a few similar situations down the other side as well.
Okay, if there are no other questions, will members will go into session. Tom?
I think if you go back to the photograph that had the other properties on it, yeah, as you can see, next door to number 1, number 3, there isn't a car park there, but they've got the car park. Number 5, now it does say in the report they were, 3 and 5 were actually done 15 years ago. 7 was done about 20 odd years ago. There's a further 3 down in the distance there with exactly the same frontage, who've got exactly the same thing. They were granted many, many years ago. On the other side of the road at the top end here, you're quite right, they can get parking down the side of the houses. As you go round the corner at the bottom there, there's other properties with small frontages, the same as these ones. There's about 4 of them have got the same type of parking. I don't accept the argument of road safety. That is the first house as you come over the brow of the hill. You can see where the person's got to park. They open their door to a light to get into their property. That is far more of a road hazard than manoeuvring in and out of their front garden. And that is what the worry of the person is. That is an extremely busy road. It's the second busiest road in Dumfries as you cross the river. It's going to get busier with opening a new hospital, and mainly off-peak times rather than peak times. So I think it makes more sense in terms of road safety to allow them to park off the road, and it's certainly safer for the people getting out and in the motor car than it is getting out and in on a very, very busy road like that, particularly with the speed that some of the traffic comes up that hill at the traffic lights, and particularly in off-peak periods when the road is not busy. Traffic tends to go a bit slower when the road is busy, but it's the quieter times of the day. Traffic comes hurtling up that hill in order to try and beat the lights, sometimes 50, 60 miles an hour. So I would say it's far more safe for the car to be off the road than parked on the road, particularly for the driver or passenger. And I'm quite happy to have this granted. It's no different to all other houses in the street. In terms of road safety, there have been no accidents there whatsoever. The only accidents I've ever seen, I've stayed there for 34 years, are actually at the junction of Ochtrelure Road, Pleasance Avenue, St Michael Street Bridge. And again, that tends to be people jumping the lights too soon or coming through the lights too late. I haven't seen any accidents on that street as a result of cars trying to get into their parking space or come out of their parking space. It's mainly been at the junction. But I would say in terms of the driver or any passenger, they're safer getting in and out of their vehicle in their own area rather than that roadway.
Thanks for that, Tom. Is there any change at all in the application between the one that was refused a number of years ago and the referral to Scottish ministers? Is there any change at all in the... Exactly the same, but just put in a number of years later?
It's actually, the previous application actually stated that the depth was 4.6 metres and it's now 4 metres.
Okay, fine.
So
Jane?
I don't quite know how that's got smaller, but...
Jane?
Well, I want to share with Councillor McAuchtery that I know there's been an accident there because I had it. In 1983, I ran into the back of Mr. Bruno of Bruno's Restaurants BMW. And so I do know there's been an accident there. While I'm sympathetic about wanting to get off-street parking, I have to say that I've actually seen people reversing into their areas, and it did cause an obstruction, and has actually also it caused somebody to swerve. I watched it as it happened because they were reversing in, and it's very close to the junction. I am sympathetic, but I suspect probably it's not correct to let that happen on that particular junction. I am inclined to go with the recommendation, regretfully, because I understand that it would be convenient, but I think just in terms of how it is up at that junction, I think it's too close to the crossroads.
Okay, so far, Ivor, Nini and Ian Blake.
Chair, I think, like yourself, I might have been about when we were doing the other two houses as well, and I think one of the reasons why we stopped at the last one was the fact that it was just getting too close to the junction. So I would be supportive of Councillor Maitland that we should refuse this application.
So I take it, Councillor Newton, that was a proposal to refuse, and it's now been seconded by Ivor. Councillor Blake?
I'd just like to comment. I think that although the houses on the opposite side of the road have driveways, in many of these occasions vehicles either drive in and reverse out. It's no different from any other part. I think the distance from the junction is sufficient, and I would say there's more danger of a car parked on the road than parking within the curtilage of the building. So I'd be quite happy to second Councillor McCauley.
I would agree with you, but David?
It's just if it helps members, just to put things in context, Ken, I'm sure will keep me right, but I think the minimum depth of a parking space is 4.8 metres. And you normally look for ideally 5. Now, the garden depth, as shown in the plan, is 4 metres. Now, the car parked outside is a Corsa, and if that is the car, that is the owner's car, then you would probably be okay. But certainly I know if I parked my car and there's a Passat, it would be well over the pavement. So it's just something to bear in mind. You can't have a condition that says the owner of the house shall only have a small car, but it has there isn't sufficient room within the site to get entry and exit in forward gear, which I think is the point that roads have been putting forward.
And since David pointed that out, if you look down that street, there's a white transit van, and I to stop the owner of the transit van parking there if it's a recognised parking place. Ian Dick?
Thanks, Chair. I'm inclined to support Councillor McCauley on this. I mean, I fully understand 4 metres is far too it's too little, and you're probably looking at 5 metres for most family saloons. A small car perhaps, but I notice there's one further down there where the wall's been removed and the hard stand allows the vehicular access to be parallel to the front of the house. And given that it's 7.3 metres along there, I think it would be perfectly feasible to allow that or a bigger car to use that hard stand. And I think we're probably all familiar with that area. It is quite a hazard coming up over the junction, and for that reason I would consider it would be safer to allow the hard standing within the grounds rather than where it is at the moment. So
and I'm being facetious, but I presume you're going to restrict it to one car, one family, because there could quite easily be a car parked in another area on the road, which would make no difference at all in road safety, but that's for another day. It's only an assumption that there's one car per household. Jock McKay?
It was just the same as Councillor Dickops. I just noticed that car sitting side on, but whether there's actually enough length there to be able to drive in, reverse back, then drive out, I doubt it.
Well, we've got a proposal, a motion from Councillor May. Oh, I've got Stephen and I'll get Ken and he can sum up. Stephen?
Thanks. It's just, what strikes me as interesting about this is what the safety issue is in terms of helping us to decide what to do with this application. I'm sure many of us here have probably heard many community groups or members of their constituents, etc., looking to improve road safety in their area, only to be informed that there's only been 5 accidents in the last 10 years. Here we have a situation where nothing's happened since 1983. So there seems to be a threshold when a community wants something to happen to improve road safety, and here we've got something where nothing's happened for 20 odd, 30 odd years, and yet the presumption is to actually err very much on the side of potential caution, even though there's a case where the car being off the road would be safer potentially. So it's just interesting how you can apply guidance, I think, in different situations, even when the appetite seems to vary. So that would just be an observation there, Chair.
I think we're all able and willing to offer observations. What about a child running along on a pouring wet day when somebody reversed into their driveway when they don't need to and they should be in a public road? There's a public safety issue there as well. But as I say, it's so subjective because none of that's happened.
I mean, it would be great if we could actually enforce a condition where people had to reverse into their driveways so they weren't reversing out onto the public road, but that's, again, subjective as well. So.
Yeah, and that's probably why the recommendation is not to endorse this. And you'll get a situation where every house in that household will want that next week, in that street anyway. Ken, did you want to just maybe summarise the points that were being raised or address them, and then we'll go to a decision?
Thank you, Chair. I perhaps can offer a little bit of clarification to assist the members. In respect of the depth of the frontage, I don't envisage that anybody is going to, or I jolly well hope that nobody is going to park their car end on in that area, because if they did so, they would overhang and obstruct the footway, and we would then have to get somebody involved, police involved, to stop the obstruction. The general way that these narrow frontages are used is that cars reverse or drive and park parallel to the road, but within the frontage. The difficulty we have with that is that by so doing, they're often unsighted in respect of vehicles and pedestrians using the footway when they're either trying to get in or out. So it is that safety issue rather than safety on the actual road. In respect of Pleasance Avenue, I looked at the accident stats for that yesterday. There have been accidents all the way down the road over the last 15 years. There's no part of the road which is immune from it. The main clusters are around the school and around the junction, but there is incidents all the way along. In respect of parking on the road, I don't have any issue whatsoever with cars parked on a road such as that. It's very wide, and parked cars actually have a calming effect on the traffic because people have to slow down to wait to get by them. So generally speaking, parked cars on the carriageway have a calming influence. The issue in respect of this site is a matter of consistency. We have opposed this type of frontage access in the past, and we will continue to do so on the grounds that it is the manoeuvres involved are more dangerous to pedestrians, cyclists and other cars than a conventional driveway where you drive in and then reverse out, or drive in, turn and drive out. The likelihood is that there'll be plenty of these in the past and there'll be plenty of these in the future, simply because of the strange manoeuvres that are involved. I'm very well aware, and my consultation report highlighted the fact that we were aware of the fact that we'd recommended these for refusal in the past, and they've been approved. So in a way, the difficulty here is a matter of consistency, and it's whether we actually go with the same recommendations that have been made in the past, or whether we change it. The issue of proximity to the lights is an issue, but it's not an overriding issue. And yes, there will be cars that go through the junction quite quickly, but the presence of cars parked in the carriageway tends to slow them down. The issue in terms of road safety is not whether there's a car parked in the carriageway or not, because I don't for a moment think that if this house gets its frontage altered, there will stop being a car in the carriageway, because there will only be room for one car across the frontage parallel to the carriageway. So any second car that belongs to that house will be parked in the road anyway.
Thanks, Ken. Ian Blake.
Thank you. I think one of the points was really covered there. I would agree with David, it'd be unreasonable to say that the applicant could only have a small car. And my point was that anybody that parking a larger car and obstructing the footpath, then it then becomes a police matter. In this particular case, I appreciate the applicant can change his car at any time, but the length of Corsa is 4 metres and 21 millimetres that would be contained within the site. If you take the wall would be coming down. But I still go, I would support the second Councillor McCauley.
I think you're too late. I think Councillor Dick done that. Oh, Councillor Blake did, okay. So we've got a motion and an amendment. I think we'll just go to the vote. Tom, you don't need the last word, but anyway.
No, I just want to make the point on the safety angle again. If somebody is manoeuvring to park, They're not going at any speed that is really going to endanger either a pedestrian or a cyclist. The real point I'm making is, if somebody's trying to get out of that car or get a child out of that car, and there's someone coming over the brow of the hill there too fast, that is a road safety issue. Get the car off the road so people can park in safety.
When there's a child out of a car is bound to take it out on the pavement side, or there's something wrong with their brains. Anyway, without any further ado, just remind members where we are, Lucy, in terms of motion amendment, please.
Okay, we've had a motion put forward by Councillor Maitland and seconded by Councillor Hislop to refuse the application as per the report. And I've had an amendment proposed by Councillor McCaughtrey and seconded by Councillor Blake to approve the application. But before I just go to the vote, can we just get some clarification as to the planning reasons for approving the application?
I don't need any planning reason because we're talking about road safety here. The reason for refusal is road safety. I'm merely saying approve.
Aye, Lucy got that mixed up. We know the reasons for refusal. It's the reason to go against the officer's recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, David, are you happy with this?
Well, what I'd scribbled down was Councillor McCaughtrey was basically moving approval because I had that there'd been no recorded accidents in the area, that the parking on street actually presented more of a hazard, and therefore it was beneficial to road safety to allow parking off street.
Can Ken just confirm there have been no accidents, because Ken's opinion was there been accidents all along the street?
Chair, I'm not aware of any accidents that are related to this location.
Thanks, Ken. Okay then, Lucy.
Okay. The motion is to refuse the application as per the report, and the amendment is to approve the application on the basis that there have been no recorded accidents and that this would in fact enhance the safety. So, Councillor Dempster.
Motion.
Councillor Blake.
Amendment.
Councillor Dick.
Amendment.
Councillor Dryborough.
Motion.
Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Hislop.
Motion.
Councillor Maitland.
Motion.
Councillor McCaughtrey.
Amendment.
Councillor McComb.
Motion.
Councillor McKee.
Motion.
Councillor Thompson.
Amendment.
And I can confirm that the motion carries with 7 votes to 4. And therefore, this application is refused as per officer's recommendation in the report.
Thank you, Lucy. We come to item 10, change of use of part of ground floor office building to form public library at Daar Road Offices, Main Street, Kirkcudbright. The application type is full plan permission, reference number 16/P/20149. The recommendation is to approve unconditionally, and the case officer is Billy Murray. Billy, just take us through your presentation, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a proposal for change of use of part of the ground floor office at Daar Road to facilitate the introduction of a public library. The committee may remember that listed building consent for alterations was granted at this committee at the May meeting. So I'll very quickly take you through. You'll be familiar with the building. That's the application site. That's the office exterior itself. It's the ground floor in this part, the rearward part of the building. That's the end view with the public access. Public access remains as existing. Reception remains as existing. These images are just to give a flavour of what the internal is like at the moment. These are the submitted plans with the application, location plan, block plan, proposed downtakings, ground floor plan, and proposed finishes. As I say, there are no physical alterations involved in this proposal. It's for change of use only. And the recommendation is to approve unconditionally.
Thanks, Billy. Any questions for the case officer? Members are then in session.
Agree the recommendation.
Unanimously agreed. Lucy, can you confirm the decision of the committee, please?
Can confirm that members have unanimously agreed the recommendation to approve this application unconditionally.
Thank you. Come to item 11. Alterations including installation of a one replacement window on rear elevation, one door in front elevation, one door in rear elevation, and replacement of plastic gutters and downpipes with cast aluminium, and repainting of building at Old Town Hall, 79 Victoria Street, Newton Stewart. The application type of listed building consent. The reference is 16/P/1/0077. The recommendation is to approve unconditionally, and the case officer is Iona Brooke. Iona, will you take us through your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. This application comes before you for the same reason as Mr Murray's. The council is the applicant and the property itself is owned by the council. The application relates to the Old Town Hall, which is located in a prominent position in Victoria Street, Newton Stewart, which is the main thoroughfare in the Newton Stewart town of Newton Stewart. This is the building here. It is proposed to undertake a number of works to refurbish the exterior and interior of the building, which would include repainting the facade, repairing and replacing existing windows, replacing stiles to two doors, repairing the existing roof, and removing some plaster internally. On the front facade, it is proposed to repair some of the existing windows, and this door here at the bottom right-hand corner, the stiles surrounding the door will be replaced. On the rear facade, the window on the top left-hand will be replaced. That's the condition of the window just now. It's proposed to replace it like for like, and that's an internal view, and you can see the bottom's completely shot. The door, which sits at the bottom left-hand corner there, is to be retained, and again, the stiles are just to be replaced and repaired. Internally, it's on first floor level that is currently used as a snooker room, and the plaster work internally in this room itself and in the stairwell to access it is going to be removed and replaced. It is recommended that the application is approved unconditionally. Thank you.
Thanks, Iona. What's your handicap at snooker? Ian? This is questions for the case officer.
Speaking of somebody who's made much use of that snooker table over the years, as somebody who's come from Newton Stewart and constantly gets bombarded with folk asking when it's going to get done up, and I have to remind them that I'm no Newton Stewart councillor, I'm Stranraer. I'm really glad to see this. Can I just ask, I take it the retention of the snooker club's use of the facility upstairs?
Thanks, Ian. Other questions for the case officer? Jim McComb, and then Jock McKee, and then Ian Blake.
Other than the fact that Iona has made the case for the necessity of the work, the slides are self-explanatory.
I don't think we're here to argue that.
I'm
certain we're not. But thanks for your observations, Jim. David McKee and then Ian Blake.
Just given issues we've had in other places regarding replacement windows, just to record and assure us that we are removing and replacing like for like.
They're only replacing one window in this instance. They had also proposed to replace the two doors, but we considered that the doors added some historical merit, especially this door in the rear elevation, we think is the original door to what would have been the original prison cell for Newton Stewart. So we have asked for the application that was originally submitted to be amended to retain these doors and only the stiles to be actually replaced. But yes, there will be on a like-for-like basis.
Ian Blake. Too much hilarity, Ian, but on you go.
Yeah. David actually stole my point there. It was the fact that the recommendation was the same style of windows. Not that I wanted to bring up the UPVC version again, but is it same style and type? It only mentions style in the recommendation.
It is, yes. The window should be identical to what is there just now.
On the same theme, before we go to members in session, I was of the opinion that buildings of this age would have cast iron work, no aluminium. And bear in mind that very often members of the public are beaten up in here, and we try to ensure a consistency both in terms of materials used and the way we approach things. It shouldn't be varied because we happen to be dealing with council property instead of a private property.
It was put to the Council Office for the Built Heritage and Scottish Historical Environment, and they had no issues with cast iron, which is powder coated, to be used in this instance as opposed to, aluminium being used in a black powder coat finish as opposed to cast iron, as it would give the appearance of such as opposed to the plastic which is currently in situ.
Yeah, I accept all that, but we have a position in this council. Take, for example, windows where we've got plastic currently installed. If people come to renew them, we insist to go back to their original construction material. And the point I'm making is, whilst it looks the same, the construction materials at that time would be cast iron. No, I'm just trying, because as sure as fate, it'll come back to bite us, actually. I mean, there's nobody here that's no members of the public, so it's a full and frank discussion, but, oh well, such is life. But we should be consistent in our approach, and we shouldn't be making allowances because it's a council property. I'm happy if that's what's happening, but that has to be then the standard from now on when we're approached about listed and historic buildings, because this is quite a significant listed building. We're not in session yet, by the way. But anyway, having said that, there's clearly no appetite for cast iron, so we're now in session.
Agree the recommendation, Chair.
Are there any alternative proposals, Jim? Lucy, just confirm the decision of the committee, please.
Can confirm that the recommendations as per the report is to approve this application unconditionally, and this has been unanimously agreed by members.
Thank you very much, Lucy, and thank you members and staff for your attendance today. No further business. Thank you.